In the Pu Ren Hospital in Jingbei City, there is a female doctor who is gentle and patient. She listens to patients' occasional complaints as well. Most people like her very much, but she doesn't seem too upset about her personal life matters. After just finishing surgery without getting enough rest, she received constant text message notifications. This is our Su Sui, Dr. Su. As expected, it's another arranged marriage. She had previously declined due to being busy with work. The new notification turned out to be a post from the forum from her student days. It asked what was the funniest thing that happened during their crush period in high school. 10 years later, someone still liked her response. During sophomore year, Su Sui had a secret admirer. One day, they both wore blue t-shirts to school. Although it was just an ordinary t-shirt, she thought of it as a couple's outfit. Perhaps the gods were rewarding me for my long-lasting crush, right? From then on, Su Sui often wore this shirt, and even imagined him wearing a blue t-shirt the next day. But one day, she realized that the other person had bought the t-shirt casually at a supermarket to meet minimum purchase requirements for just 9.9 yuan. At that moment, Su Sui finally woke up and understood something. He might never see her existence. As she was about to hide this post from years ago, a new reply popped up. "Little miss, do you still like him now?" Her eyes darkened slightly. After a while, she didn't reply but exited the app, then called her mother. "Mom, I'm going for an arranged marriage." Looking at the planes taking off from the nearby flight school, Su Sui's thoughts were scattered. She fell silent again, as if her youth had been snatched away. After graduation, under pressure, she reluctantly agreed to her parents' matchmaking plans. The match was with a lawyer, and they got along well enough. Later, Lin Wensheng suggested taking a walk nearby. Su Sui thought it wouldn't be proper to be too reserved after coming out for an arranged meeting, so she nodded. Below the restaurant was a bustling food street. At this time, a man lit a cigarette with a lighter and took a deep breath. "Boss, don't put too much pressure on yourself." He leaned back heavily against his chair. His name was Zhou Jinze, a pilot temporarily returning to Jingbei for some reason. Next to him was Cheng Yo, his college classmate who had come out to cheer him up. "It's hard to rest now, so you might as well take in the scenery and relax." Zhou Jinze still looked tired, holding a cigarette between his fingers, smoke rising slowly. He didn't forget to warn him. "If he kept looking around, just tell your wife." Chen Yo's eyes lit up as he followed someone far away. As soon as he saw a pretty girl across the street, Zhou Jinze instinctively looked over. His dark eyes swept past her, and then paused. She indeed had the typical southern Chinese features. Fair skin, large, expressive eyes, wearing a colorful dress. But their atmosphere suggested they were just acquaintances, probably from an arranged meeting. However, both of them seemed refined. Quite a good match. Cheng Yu turned on his channel. Su Sui was about to walk over when Lin Wensheng pulled her back. "Don't go there. It's better not to get involved. If you're caught by the thugs or the old lady, things could get bad." Su Sui firmly shook off his hand and looked at him with a sly smile. "I like being scammed." Seeing that one of them had a pipe, Lin Wensheng didn't move forward. He watched her walk away without reaching out to stop her. The thugs were getting into it when Su Sui spoke up. "How much do you want? I'll pay." Su Sui thought the matter was simple. She just needed to pay and everything would be fine. But one of the thugs saw a pretty girl. His eyes lit up, and he laughed loudly. One of them even reached for her shoulder. "Since it's my sister asking, let's call it quits. Come have a drink with me, brother." Unexpectedly, Su Sui grabbed his wrist and twisted hard, making a cracking sound. The thug cried out in pain and released his grip. She raised her hand to slap him. Su Sui was startled by the sudden attack, closed her eyes, and prepared for the hit. Suddenly, a long, slender hand stopped the thug's palm. It was Zhou Jinze, looking serious at the scene before him. He couldn't stand seeing Xiao Karami bullying an old lady selling sugarcane juice. He stepped in to help. However, Xiao Karami, drunk and angry, started fighting with Su Sui. Su Sui closed her eyes, ready for a beating, but nothing happened. She opened them curiously and saw Zhou Jinze had blocked the thug's hand. After helping the old lady, Zhou Jinze noticed the fight was still going on. "All right," he said, but found that the fight ended quickly as Zhou Jinze handled 4 thugs alone. He casually took a cigarette from his pocket and lit it. His face showed some minor injuries, but he didn't seem to mind. He took a deep breath, looked up at the stars, then turned sharply towards Su Sui. The familiar look on Zhou Jinze's face made her smile. "What are you thinking?" she said, noting his casual demeanor. After a moment of silence, Su Sui spoke with surprising clarity. "Thank you for tonight. I'll go now." She walked towards the end of the alley. Zhou Jinze was stunned and seemed to grit his teeth. "You're on an arranged meeting." But she didn't say anything more as she kept walking. 8 years ago, they met on the school playground. Before Zhou Jinze could speak, Su Sui said those words that hurt him deeply. "Let's end it." Zhou Jinze was taken aback and looked at her seriously before slowly replying, "What did you say?" Tears welled up in her eyes as she lowered her head, feeling the injustice of it all. In early October, the heat lingered, making the air thick and suffocating. Su Sui suddenly woke from a dream, realizing that everything was real and had left an indelible mark on her heart. Before she could think more, someone knocked on the door. "Dr. Shu, emergency." It was a young girl who couldn't remove a light bulb stuck in her mouth. "Don't try this at home." But before she entered the room, she heard laughter inside. The office door opened, and Su Sui stepped in, stunned to see Zhou Jinze again. The air seemed to freeze as they stared at each other. "When did you last see your ex-boyfriend?" Su Sui thought it was just a brief encounter, but the next day she saw him again at the hospital with a little girl who had swallowed a light bulb. The girl was crying and holding Zhou Jinze's shirt tightly as Su Sui took over from the nurse. She noticed their subtle intimacy and tried to hide her emotions. When the hammer came, the girl confessed that she was serious. Su Sui sized up the situation and decided to distract the girl. Noticing how well-dressed she was today, she asked if she was going out. Before she could answer, Su Sui gently pushed down on a pot in the kitchen, making it crack loudly. The girl was stunned for a moment before screaming. Zhou Jinze didn't say anything, but stood there smiling. He patted her head and said, "All right, I'll take you out for ice cream soon." She immediately calmed down. Su Sui watched the scene, lost in thought. She rarely had to comfort people. Just a few kind words would make them give up. After removing her gloves, she threw them into the trash and left the room, lost in her thoughts. Her side glance was fixed on her departure's back. Su Sui's hair tie at the back seemed a bit loose, and a strand of loose hair fell down to stick to her cheek. After spending nearly half an hour in the office, Su Sui left for a while and passed by the nurse station when a young nurse called out to her. "Dr. Shu, did someone look for you just now? It was that family member who stuffed his mouth with light bulbs." She pointed towards something. Su Sui's hair tie at the back made her stand still in shock. She didn't hear what others were saying. She nodded slightly and remained calm, letting them take the things away themselves. Su Sui turned to walk forward but saw Zhou Jinze and a girl beside him near a corner. The girl wore a stone-patterned outfit, had an attractive appearance with bright red lips, and a curvy figure that drew attention. When she looked up at Zhou Jinze, he seemed unbothered, but her eyes softened as if she was easily charmed by his charm. Su Sui's hands in her pockets clenched tightly, the tips turning white, and she snapped back to reality. She wasn't always like this. She liked flamboyant and bold types, while she herself was too obedient and well-behaved, never a choice for good students. The girl approached Su Sui, close enough to whisper, "Dr. Shu, do you know my cousin? He's your brother-in-law." She leaned in playfully, as if they had an intimate relationship. However, her question was too bold and direct, leaving Su Sui at a loss for words. She looked up at Zhou Jinze, hoping she could help. Zhou Jinze looked at Su Sui with a playful smirk, his tongue touching his lower lip. "Tell me, what's our relationship? It seems like we're in an ambiguous or romantic situation," he said, hinting that it was all on her to decide. Su Sui understood the teasing and realized how someone as privileged as she could never truly understand what it meant to love someone deeply. Zhou Jinze looked at Xu Sui with a playful smirk, his tongue touching his lower lip. Tell me, what's our relationship? It seems like we're in an ambiguous or romantic situation, he said, hinting that it was all on her to decide. Xu Sui understood the teasing and realized how someone as privileged as she could never truly understand what it meant to love someone deeply. With a calm tone, her movements were clean and fluid, earning small applause from those around her. She remained composed despite their praise, focusing on her work. Her roommate, Liang Shuang, approached, asking for advice on how to achieve such precision. Xu Sui agreed readily, but she was still too nervous, her hands shaking uncontrollably. As the sound of a plane taking off echoed outside, Xu Sui's needle accidentally pierced the wrong spot, causing blood to flow down the frog's leg. Liang Shuang became angry and started arguing with her about the mistake. In the canteen, they managed to get some food. A boy wearing glasses approached them hesitantly, asking if they could sit together. Xu Sui politely declined his request. Liang Shuang sat across from her, observing Xu Sui's delicate face and expressive eyes. She had a typical southern Chinese appearance. In the milk box, she held her face in her hands, remembering how ordinary she was back in high school, easily overlooked among others. But now everything had changed. Liang Shuang had already rejected several people who were close to Xu Sui. Xu Sui bit on her straw without moving, thinking about a certain face from the game. At 5 p.m., Xu Sui stood alone on the rooftop of his school's private administration building, feeling the cool evening breeze. The wind blew his papers around like white pigeons preparing to take flight. He was lost in thought when he suddenly heard someone whispering nearby. Xu Sui felt too hot and uncomfortable. When he looked up, a boy had turned his head towards him. Their eyes met mid-air. The boy's short hair revealed his stubble, his eyelids were shallow, and his pupils were dark and unfocused. His Adam's apple moved slowly as the wind stopped. Xu Sui fled quickly, and their conversation carried on the breeze to his ears. "What are you daydreaming about? Did you see someone familiar?" The boy's voice was cold and metallic. "I don't know him," he replied. As night fell, Liang Shuang looked at the empty corridor, feeling that it was too late for Bai Yumei not to return. Liang Shuang looked at Xu Sui with a pained expression, complaining about his brain's weakness in choosing such a challenging major. He had started losing hair after just 1 month. Xu Sui asked if he wanted her to order him some energy drinks. The door opened, and Xu Sui was startled as he read a book. A new roommate arrived with 2 others carrying luggage. The new roommate wore sunglasses and carried designer clothes. He waved his finger at the boys, saying, "This is my private room. You guys can't come in." The boys hesitated, unsure of what to do. The new roommate took out some money from his bag and gave it to them. His name was Hu Qianxi, clearly coming from a wealthy family. Hu Qianxi introduced herself with a cheerful demeanor. She had a round face with big eyes and a baby-like plumpness. Xu Sui extended his hand in greeting, calling her Xi. They quickly became close friends as she struggled to unpack her belongings. Zhou Jinze looked at the empty bed, knowing that he would have a new roommate soon. He felt a mix of emotions as he thought about their interactions and Zhou Jinze's arrogant gaze. The next day, Hu Qianxi arrived with 2 others carrying luggage. She was eager to make friends and introduced herself confidently. Xu Sui helped her unpack, making the process smoother. At dinner in the canteen, Liang Shuang noticed Bai Yumei's boyfriend, Zhou Jingze. Bai Yumei kept talking to him, her eyes sparkling with affection. Suddenly, someone bumped into Bai Yumei, and a boy quickly grabbed his shoulder to prevent an accident. Zhou Jingze ignored them both, focusing on the road. Liang Shuang was amazed by their closeness, noting that this was his first time seeing Zhou Jingze in person. He heard that Zhou Jingze changed girlfriends frequently, never staying with one for more than 3 months. He lowered his gaze and sighed, finding the food tasteless. Liang Shuang didn't notice Xu Sui's change, so he asked with great interest, "Guess how long Bai Yue can stay by his side this time?" Xu Sui didn't want to guess about his girlfriend's shelf life, so he quickly changed the subject. "How do you know his name is Zhou Jingze? How do you know it's true? Could it be that you secretly followed him too? Your heart was just exposed by an unintentional revelation. Su Sui was drinking water and choked slightly, coughing violently as his face turned red. Liang Shuang immediately raised his hand to pat him on the back. Su Sui had never experienced such a humiliation before. Seeing his crush with other girls on the rooftop made his heart sink. But when asked how he knew about the tattoo, Su Sui just smiled and said it was a guess. It wasn't hard for someone to notice that Zhou Jingzi's hand had a distinct white mark. "It's nothing," Zhou Jingzi casually said as they approached Jingshang University. Su Sui and Hu Qianxi waited at the school gate, but saw him after 10 minutes, much like discovering a new continent. Su Sui watched the promotional posters while Hu Qianxi turned to see Zhou Jingzi with another boy behind him. Zhou Jingzi's hand gestured towards his friend. "Hey, isn't this Miss Hu Qianxi?" Hu Qianxi ran over and punched the guy named Sheng Nanzhou, who was a good friend of Zhou Jingzi. Hu Qianxi then introduced Su Sui as her roommate to Zhou Jingzi. "So, this is my roommate, Su Sui," Hu Qianxi said. Zhou Jingzi extinguished his cigarette by the trash can and looked at Su Sui, who was too close for words. He just smiled but didn't say anything. Zhou Jingzi was a student from Jingshang University, Su Sui's junior high school classmate and his secret crush. When he learned that Hu Qianxi's uncle was Zhou Jingzi, Su Sui couldn't believe it. But then he thought maybe Zhou Jingzi had forgotten him, so they decided to start over. "Su Sui," Zhou Jingzi said generously, taking them to a small restaurant in the cafeteria for photos. Hu Qianxi didn't like celery, and Sheng Nanzhou forced him to eat it, adding his food to Su Sui's bowl. Hu Qianxi was unimpressed and compared him to their dog. "It's really like that," Zhou Jingzi said with a sly smile. "You should have introduced yourself first." Sheng Nanzhou ignored them and looked at Su Sui. "Xiaoxi, you didn't introduce yourself earlier. I'm Sheng Nanzhou. Hu Qianxi's friend is my friend." "Why would he be your uncle?" Hu Qianxi said bluntly. They had a family connection and grew up together. As they talked, Hu Qianxi whispered to Su Sui that Zhou Jingzi didn't seem fond of Bai Yuyue. "What did you say?" Zhou Jingzi asked awkwardly. "Nothing," he laughed. "It's just that Jingshang University isn't very big." They quickly finished their free lunch, and Hu Qianxi waved goodbye to her uncle. Zhou Jingzi smiled but didn't speak as Sheng Nanzhou was unusually friendly. Su Sui stood quietly by, listening to the conversation. Huan Yuyue's phone rang, and it was from his new girlfriend, Bai Yuyue, who was also Su Sui's roommate. Hu Qianxi couldn't help but ask about their relationship. "How can he be your uncle?" Hu Qianxi asked bluntly. They had a family connection and grew up together. As they spoke, Huan Yuyue seemed to dislike Bai Yuyue, which made Su Sui curious. "What did you say?" Zhou Jingzi asked awkwardly. "Nothing," he laughed. "Jingshang University is neither big nor small." They quickly finished their lunch and said goodbye, but Zhou Jingzi didn't remember him as they left. That night, for some students, a new day began. Su Sui sat alone in his dorm, watching videos of Zhou Jingzi's speech. Curious about what Sheng Nanzhou had said, he watched the video. Zhou Jingzi stood on stage and spoke with confidence. "I'll be brief," Zhou Jingzi said, "but you can think it's all nonsense." He looked around and continued. "Whether you still have dreams or are tired of waking up to an alarm at 6 in the morning, the future is uncertain. The odds of becoming a pilot, facing challenges like being grounded, are daunting." The crowd was silent as they waited for Zhou Jingzi's words. He stood confidently and said, "God doesn't speak. I decide everything." A gust of wind blew his black t-shirt, and he smiled at the chaos below. Suddenly a loud noise startled Su Sui, who quickly covered his computer. Huan Yuyue entered with a phone call, looking dazed. He ignored Su Sui and walked to the balcony. Cool noticed something was wrong and whispered to Su Sui that Huan Yuyue had been like this all day. When they went down to the convenience store, Huan Yuyue's phone broke, and he cried uncontrollably. Su Sui picked up his phone and cleaned a wound on his face with water. He then bought some window stickers and applied them to the flower bed, remembering him from high school. "I'll miss you," Su Sui said as he left. A few days later in the Golden Hall cafeteria, they unexpectedly met Zhou Jingzi again. Hu Qianxi and Sheng Nanzhou started arguing. After teasing Hu Qianxi, Sheng Nanzhou turned to Su Sui. Sister, what's this good food? Can you recommend it? Shu Sui was surprised as he didn't like spicy food. Sheng Nanzhou then pushed a bowl of spicy mutton noodles towards him. Zhou Jinze looked at Zhou Ci with disdain and said, "If you don't want it, just get out of the way," before silently kicking him from behind. His body naturally squeezed in front of Shu Sui's, making Shu Sui feel how close he was. At the dinner table, Xiao Hu, who was gossiping, started asking about Bai Yue without even taking off his chopsticks. Shu Sui didn't expect Huan Qianxi to be so direct. It hurt and burned like hell. His eyes filled with poetic imagery of pain. Suddenly, a hand pushed a glass of water towards him. Shu Sui's heart raced as he met Zhou Jinze's gaze. His eyes seemed to dive into the rocks at the bottom of a river, dark and silent. "Would you dare try 3 cups of spicy red oil? How much spiciness can you handle?" Shu Sui himself ordered the spicy rice noodles but ended up crying from the heat. Zhou Jinze, who only found him familiar, pushed another glass of water over. "Did you notice anything?" Huan Qianxi, on the side, didn't notice their expressions and asked Zhou Jinze if he was sad. Shu Sui paused, a scene flashing in his mind. Sheng Nanzhou quickly took up the topic, pointing at Zhou Jinze with a finger. He sneered first, then patted him on the chest. "You have no heart." Zhou Jinze touched his ear gently and said affectionately, "Be good. I'll give you a massage tonight." Sheng Nanzhou pulled away from him like he was electrocuted. In an instant, Sheng Nanzhou became serious again. Zhou Jinze didn't care about the breakup, just that he lost something. He sounded sad but said it wasn't much of a loss. Huan Qianxi hadn't expected to lose a cat she had only had for a month. Shu Sui was oblivious to their conversation, while Zhou Jinze casually sniffed and said, "White-eye cat." Little did he know this white-eye cat was the one Shu Sui fed last night. The car moved slowly. Shu Sui saw a convenience store nearby. He walked over, and it opened automatically with a ding. A voiceless blue umbrella greeted him. "Welcome." Zhou Jinze appeared, smoking a cigarette, his muscles tight as he played games on the side. His cold yet alluring presence was clear from the corner of his eye. Shu Sui nodded, then focused back on his game. He turned around and picked through the refrigerators, hearing game sounds behind him. Zhou Jinze wasn't looking at him, but made him nervous. They were alone in a space, and Shu Sui froze, forgetting what he came for. The cold air from the fridge startled him, and he picked a box of white peach milk tea out of panic. His face was pale. Zhou Jinze said quietly, staring at him. Shu Sui felt dizzy. Zhou Jinze smiled, his tongue touching his cheek. "Just wait." He found a jacket and a box of mint candies. Shu Sui watched silently, unsure what he wanted. Zhou Jinze handed the box over, and Shu Sui's long lashes trembled as he took it. Black paper flashed before him. "I often eat these to help with motion sickness," Zhou Jinze said with a cigarette in his mouth. He popped one into his mouth and chewed, making a crunchy sound. Shu Sui watched, lowered his head, and thanked him for the candies. Fate seemed to conspire against them on that day. "Not good," Zhou Jinze said softly. He handed over some mint candies, saying, "Wait." Then he found a jacket and put it in his hand. Shu Sui looked at him, unsure what he wanted. Zhou Jinze left the room, then came back to explain. It turned out that Sheng Nanzhou's younger brother was the tutor, and the convenience store belonged to their family. The tutoring session lasted an hour due to Shu Sui's patience and professionalism. Zhou Jinze got ready to leave but was stopped by Sheng Nanzhou. "No way," he said. "You're the only one here, stay for dinner." Sheng Nanzhou made them all eat together. Shu Sui waved off the invitation, feeling awkward. His gaze passed over Sheng Nanzhou and saw Zhou Jinze with Sheng Yanjia. He decided to think about it. Fate was always so coincidental. Back at the dorm, Huan Tianxi heard of Shu Sui's day. She felt sorry, but helpless. Fortunately, Sheng Nanzhou's younger brother was okay. Still, Shu Sui couldn't help but wonder about Zhou Jinze. He saw Zhou Jinze and Sheng Yanjia together, the latter looking rebellious. "I only respect my Jinze-ge," Sheng Yanjia said. Shu Sui wasn't impressed. "Okay, now you have 2 people to admire." They played games for hours, with Sheng Yanjia feeling like he had mastered everything. They sat on a soft carpet and started their game journey. Sheng Yanjia's character was almost at the end, while Su Sui remained calm. After 20 minutes, they finished the game successfully. Sheng Yanjia was thrilled, adding another hero to his list. Su Sui just smiled. "Why aren't you here?" Sheng Yanjia asked, unsure how to answer. Zhou Jinze and his brother were close, but not as often as Sheng Nanzhou's younger brother. The doorbell rang, and Sheng Yanjia called out for his brothers. Su Sui looked up, confused. Outside stood Sheng Nanzhou and Zhou Jinze. Sheng Nanzhou hugged his brother, but he ignored him and hugged Zhou Jinze instead. "You can't believe this," Sheng Nanzhou said angrily. Sheng Yanjia continued to ignore him as he recounted the game session with Su Sui. Zhou Jinze looked on, amused. Su Sui's face was panicked. He wiped his mouth and hid a milk bag behind his back. "I only play for stress relief," he said. "If someone wanted to play, he wouldn't mind." His words made him regret it as Huan Qianxi interrupted. "Teacher, you're biased," Sheng Yanjia complained. Zhou Jinze slapped him. "What else would I do?" Everyone in the room except for Sheng Yanjia felt embarrassed. Su Sui packed up and left quickly. Zhou Jinze watched silently but could feel his intense gaze. As he was about to leave, Sheng Nanzhou appeared and invited them to dinner. Su Sui smiled awkwardly and declined. Sheng Nanzhou's strength pulled him back in. Zhou Jinze just smiled, showing interest in Su Sui. It was already late when they left. "My car is under warranty," Su Sui said nervously. He tried to refuse, but Zhou Jinze picked up the keys and said, "Let me drive you home." Sheng Nanzhou added that he should have remembered they were from neighboring schools. They left together, with Zhou Jinze waving goodbye. Zhou Jinze entered a grand house in Nanzhou's neighborhood, 80 Amber Lane. He asked Su Sui to wait outside while the house was dark and silent. Suddenly, Zhou Jinze threw a black helmet at him. Su Sui caught it, nearly falling over. Zhou Jinze leaned against his motorcycle. "Try it on." The helmet was too big, covering his entire face. At that moment, Zhen Guozhe's face was flushed as he took deep breaths. Zhou Jinze threw in a sentence and went back into the house again. Not long after, he came out with a bright yellow helmet in his hand. "Try this on." Zhou Jinze handed it to him. The helmet was clearly one size smaller, fitting Straight Su perfectly. With the bright yellow helmet on, Straight Su's clear eyes were revealed. Zhen Guozhe gave him a look, and the smile on his face couldn't be contained anymore. Straight Su felt a bit strange. Is there something wrong? This helmet belongs to Sheng Yan's family. He bought it when he was in 6th grade. Straight Su was taken aback again, but quickly understood. He touched the helmet gently and whispered. Straight Su appeared like a Jianan with a mischievous smile on his face. But deep down, there was an unspoken darkness that no one could touch. However, facing Straight Su, he felt differently. He proactively asked if Straight Su could smoke for him. After receiving Straight Su's reply, Zhou Jinze took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. Just then, the phone interrupted their calm moment. The caller wasn't anyone else but his biological father, Zhen Zhengyan. He didn't answer, and the phone kept ringing insistently. Zhou Jinze tapped to accept it without any pleasantries, his tone icy cold. "What is it?" "Have dinner, it's my birthday, just a family gathering." Hearing the word family, Zhou Jinze's expression flashed with unease as he directly said, "I have something important. Leave father-son time for me." Without waiting for a reply, Zhou Jinze hung up and silently clenched his fists. The cigarette in his hand bent without warning and was thrown to the ground, crushed underfoot. The last flicker of flame extinguished. Zhou Jinze rode his motorcycle back to school with Straight Su, clearly in a bad mood. The wind blew fiercely. Soon, he leaned forward and sped up. He vividly remembered how helpless he felt after his mother's death. Even the parent-teacher meeting was skipped by his father, who instead attended his stepmother's son's graduation ceremony. This thought made Zhou Jinze accelerate again. The wind rushed past him at a speed twice as fast, and the scenery blurred like in a movie with accelerated frames. Saint Shu's heart raced to his throat. He had never ridden so fast before, feeling nervous and scared. He rode faster and faster until everything around him became blurry. He knew Zhou Jinze was venting, so he silently held onto the handlebars. Finally, after all that, he felt Saint Shu's entire body relax as they returned to school. With the helmet on, Zhou Jinze glanced back at him. Saint Shu's fingers were white from gripping the handlebars tightly. His heart skipped a beat, like being snapped by something. Zhou Jinze unconsciously eased off the throttle and slowed down. He didn't know it was an unintentional compromise. The speed reduced, and Saint Shu felt the tension in his body slowly dissipate as he returned to his usual carefree state. Summer had long passed, but the cool evening breeze was pleasant. They had traveled most of the way when Zhou Jinze slowed down. Saint Shu's voice came through. "Scared of me?" "No, I'm not," Saint Shu quickly replied. "It's just that being with you makes me so nervous. I always want to say something, but I'm afraid you won't like it." Saint Shu thought to himself, "What do you need this for?" Zhou Jinze asked apathetically as he stared ahead. He focused on the road, scared of the descent. Saint Shu reached out cautiously and grabbed his shirt, his fingertips accidentally touching his skin before quickly withdrawing. Shouldn't have done that, he thought, gently brushing past like a feather. Zhou Jinze gripped the handlebars tightly, staring straight ahead. The wind messed up Saint Shu's hair, one strand sticking to his ankle. He stared at the blue veins on his calf and reached out, carefully pulling him down. His fingertips touched his skin accidentally before quickly withdrawing. Shouldn't have done that, he thought, like a feather brushing past. Zhou Jinze gripped the handlebars tightly as they descended. His broad back was especially noticeable with the hunched shoulders. Saint Shu smelled the cigarette smoke and the mint from his mouth. Saint Shu's hair was tousled by the wind, one strand sticking to his ankle. He stared at the blue veins on Zhou Jinze's calf and reached out, carefully pulling him down. His fingertips accidentally touched his skin before quickly withdrawing. Shouldn't have done that, he thought, like a feather brushing past. Zhou Jinze gripped the handlebars tightly as they descended. His broad back was especially noticeable with the hunched shoulders. Saint Shu smelled the cigarette smoke and the mint from his mouth. Finally, after all that, he felt Saint Su's entire body relax as they returned to school. With the helmet on, Zhou Jinze glanced back at him. Saint Su's fingers were white from gripping the handlebars tightly. His heart skipped a beat, like being snapped by something. Zhou Jinze unconsciously eased off the throttle and slowed down. He didn't know it was an unintentional compromise. The speed reduced, and Saint Su felt the tension in his body slowly dissipate as he returned to his usual carefree state. Summer had long passed, but the cool evening breeze was pleasant. They had traveled most of the way when Zhou Jinze slowed down. Saint Su's voice came through. "Scared of me?" "No, I'm not," Saint Su quickly replied. "It's just that being with you makes me so nervous. I always want to say something, but I'm afraid you won't like it." Saint Su thought to himself, "What do you need this for?" Zhou Jinze asked apathetically as he stared ahead. He focused on the road, scared of the descent. Saint Su reached out cautiously and grabbed his shirt, his fingertips accidentally touching his skin before quickly withdrawing. Shouldn't have done that, he thought, gently brushing past like a feather. The wind messed up Saint Su's hair, one strand sticking to his ankle. He stared at the blue veins on Zhou Jinze's calf and reached out, carefully pulling him down. His fingertips accidentally touched his skin before quickly withdrawing. Shouldn't have done that, he thought, like a feather brushing past. Zhou Jinze gripped the handlebars tightly as they descended. His broad back was especially noticeable with the hunched shoulders. Saint Su smelled the cigarette smoke and the mint from his mouth. The wind messed up Saint Su's hair, one strand sticking to his ankle. He stared at the blue veins on Zhou Jinze's calf and reached out, carefully pulling him down. His fingertips accidentally touched his skin before quickly withdrawing. Shouldn't have done that, he thought, like a feather brushing past. Zhou Jinze gripped the handlebars tightly as they descended. His broad back was especially noticeable with the hunched shoulders. Saint Su smelled the cigarette smoke and the mint from his mouth. The wind messed up Saint Su's hair, one strand sticking to his ankle. He stared at the blue veins on Zhou Jinze's calf and reached out, carefully pulling him down. His fingertips accidentally touched his skin before quickly withdrawing. Shouldn't have done that, he thought, like a feather brushing past. Zhou Jinze gripped the handlebars tightly as they descended. His broad back was especially noticeable with the hunched shoulders. Saint Su smelled the cigarette smoke and the mint from his mouth. The wind messed up Saint Shu's hair, one strand sticking to his ankle. He stared at the blue veins on Zhou Jinze's calf and reached out, carefully pulling him down. His fingertips accidentally touched his skin before quickly withdrawing. Shouldn't have done that, he thought, like a feather brushing past. Zhou Jinze gripped the handlebars tightly as they descended. His broad back was especially noticeable with the hunched shoulders. Saint Shu smelled the cigarette smoke and the mint from his mouth. The wind messed up Saint Shu's hair, one strand sticking to his ankle. He stared at the blue veins on Zhou Jinze's calf and reached out, carefully pulling him down. His fingertips accidentally touched his skin before quickly withdrawing. Shouldn't have done that, he thought, like a feather brushing past. Zhou Jinze gripped the handlebars tightly as they descended. His broad back was especially noticeable with the hunched shoulders. Saint Shu smelled the cigarette smoke and the mint from his mouth. The wind messed up Saint Shu's hair, one strand sticking to his ankle. He stared at the blue veins on Zhou Jinze's calf and reached out, carefully pulling him down. His fingertips accidentally touched his skin before quickly withdrawing. Shouldn't have done that, he thought, like a feather brushing past. Zhou Jinze gripped the handlebars tightly as they descended. His broad back was especially noticeable with the hunched shoulders. Saint Shu smelled the cigarette smoke and the mint from his mouth. The wind messed up Saint Shu's hair, one strand sticking to his ankle. He stared at the blue veins on Zhou Jinze's calf and reached out, carefully pulling him down. His fingertips accidentally touched his skin before quickly withdrawing. Shouldn't have done that, he thought, like a feather brushing past. Zhou Jinze gripped the handlebars tightly as they descended. His broad back was especially noticeable with the hunched shoulders. Saint Shu smelled the cigarette smoke and the mint from his mouth. The wind messed up Saint Shu's hair, one strand sticking to his ankle. He stared at the blue veins on Zhou Jinze's calf and reached out, carefully pulling him down. His fingertips accidentally touched his skin before quickly withdrawing. Shouldn't have done that, he thought, like a feather brushing past. Zhou Jinze gripped the handlebars tightly as they descended. His broad back was especially noticeable with the hunched shoulders. Saint Shu smelled the cigarette smoke and the mint from his mouth. The wind messed up Saint Shu's hair, one strand sticking to his ankle. He stared at the blue veins on Zhou Jinze's calf and reached out, carefully pulling him down. His fingertips accidentally touched his skin before quickly withdrawing. Shouldn't have done that, he thought, like a feather brushing past. Zhou Jinze gripped the handlebars tightly as they descended. His broad back was especially noticeable with the hunched shoulders. Saint Shu smelled the cigarette smoke and the mint from his mouth. He paid no attention to Sheng Nanzhou's reaction and walked past him calmly. When he heard that he wanted compensation for mental distress, he even bothered less, as he had more important things to do, going over to the neighboring school. After finishing his errand, Zhao Li sent a message to Hu Qixi. "Come out for dinner tonight. I have something to discuss with you. You can bring Shu Sui along if you want." Hu Qixi replied, "Okay," but Shu Sui wouldn't come out. He had been in a bad mood these few days and saw the message without much interest. Zhou Jinze was puzzled as to why he felt down. The two of them, with Hu Qixi looking uninterested, were standing at the school gate with a boy. Zhou Jinze instinctively squinted his eyes to look over. He didn't know what the boy had said, but Shu Sui's smile on his face was about to melt away. Sensing someone staring at him, Shu Sui turned around subconsciously, and his heart tightened as his pupils dilated sharply. His body retreated involuntarily, kicking against a curb. Shi Yuejie walked over slowly with his hands in his pockets. Under the black beanie was an expression that seemed to mock everything. He chewed on a mint candy, his face showing a blue smile. When he saw Zhou Jinze, his smile slightly faded, but it returned to normal as he approached. Shu Sui asked him, "Why are you here? Zhou Jinze looked down at him. Xu Sui felt the atmosphere was off and wanted to break the awkwardness by introducing them when Shi Yuejie spoke first with a gentle smile. Jinze, long time no see. He held up his mint candy, biting it hard. You think we're what? Zhou Jinze stared at Xu Yuejie directly, like a hidden sword. Xu Yuejie hesitated for a moment and finally said 2 words. Friends. Zhou Jinze's lips curled slightly in a mocking arc, but didn't say anything more. With Zhou Jinze's strong presence between them, Xu Yuejie was unsure what to say. He decided to leave by saying goodbye to Xu Sui. Before leaving, he hesitated and patted Xu Sui on the shoulder, smiling. Take care. After Xu Yuejie left, Zhou Jinze was already at the bus stop. He put a piece of mint candy in his mouth, his jawline firm and hard. Without saying anything, Xu Sui feared he might misunderstand him and explained, That guy is my proctor during the exam. Something happened. Xu Sui didn't tell Zhou Jinze who had framed him because he was his senior. Senior, Zhou Jinze said with a half smile, but didn't say more. Zhou Jinze stood silently at the bus stop, not saying anything. Xu Sui feared he might misunderstand and explained, That guy is my proctor during the exam. Something happened. He added that they had already resolved it after the exam. Zhou Jinze nodded, his eyes showing a hint of concern. After resolving the issue, Xu Sui invited Shi Yuejie for tea to avoid owing him favors. This led to the scene where Zhou Jinze saw them together. Xu Sui wanted to say something more, but was called by a teacher to go to the office for his exam papers. As he left, Zhou Jinze said, Go quickly, I have something too. Xu Sui rubbed his head in pain and left alone. Zhou Jinze stood there, his expression cold as he watched Xu Sui leave. He dialed 1017's number and called Bai Yuemei, who was still upset about the breakup. She asked him to come over for dinner, but Zhou Jinze refused. He had been a disciplined person, unlike Xu Sui. Xu Sui heard an argument and stopped walking. Through a layer of wild roses, he saw Shi Yuejie arguing with Bai Yuemei. Bai Yuemei was no longer the proud one. She hugged Shi Yuejie tightly. Do you still like me? However, Shi Yuejie pulled away coldly. We're over. Bai Yuemei cried uncontrollably. Zhou Jinze stood there and shouted at him to think about it. The other person left without looking back. He finally gave up because he knew he had no chance with Zhou Jinze. Zhou Jinze was tall and handsome in black pants and boots. He tapped his foot. Come out. Xu Sui moved a bit closer, explaining that it was unintentional. Zhou Jinze approached him closely, his eyes dark as if challenging him. Talk to me, he said, his breath warm on Xu Sui's ear. Xu Sui's face turned red, and he felt embarrassed. Zhou Jinze gave him a bottle of milk, which was still warm. He thanked Zhou Jinze, who seemed indifferent. At 9 p.m., Wu Qixi led Xu Sui to the food street. She ordered drinks for them. Xu Sui refused because he had never drunk alcohol before. Daring Liu tried to persuade him but was kicked by Zhou Jinze. Daring Liu took over and drank it all in one go. Zhou Jinze brought milk for Xu Sui, who was surprised. Thank you, Xu Sui said softly. Zhou Jinze acted nonchalant. No problem. He had a softer side that he didn't expect to show. They were discussing forming a band for the school competition. Huxi asked why Zhou Jinze was so interested in campus activities. Because of the prize, 2 nights at the North Mountain Ski Resort. Daring Liu responded, He begged me for a long time. Huxi agreed reluctantly because she had always cared about him. When Xu Sui saw his phone buzz with Bai Yuemei's apology message, he thought of Zhou Jinze. He thanked her and went to the meeting where they were forming a band. They needed one more person for the drums. Xu Sui volunteered, surprising everyone. At the school, Huxi was annoyed by Zhou Jinze's jokes about his band name. Let's call it Barbecue Night, Zhou Jinze suggested. The others looked at him strangely. This name was too obvious. Zhou Jinze laughed. Stupid. During a break in class, Xu Sui was organizing notes when Shi Yuejie called out to her. He had come to tell her about the exam cheating incident. Xu Sui left calmly and met Shi Yuejie, who wore a white hoodie. He told her he needed to inform her about it. Zhou Jinze brought milk for Xu Sui, surprising him. Thank you, Xu Sui said softly. Zhou Jinze smiled but didn't say anything more. Huxi was organizing a band and asked Su Sui if she could help. She had always been jealous of his skills in the medical competition. During class, Huxi and Liang Shuang were teasing Su Sui about her new friends. Su Sui ignored them as usual. Shi Yuejie came to tell her about the exam cheating incident. He congratulated her on winning first place in the medical skills competition. "Go back to your class," he said gently. The room erupted with laughter, but Su Sui remained unaffected. Su Sui really is popular, huh? Su Sui rubbed his face and wondered why no one believed him when he said something simple. Hu Qianxi raised her head from the book upon hearing this, looking at Su Sui as if she had discovered something. Su Sui was always calm and composed regardless of who he faced, even towards Shi Yuejie. But whenever it came to Zhou Jinze, he would become a bit different, often blushing and nervous. Hu Qianxi sighed helplessly and rubbed her forehead. Zhou Jinze is just trouble. At this moment, the phone on the table rang, and both Hu Qianxi and Su Sui received messages simultaneously. Su Sui found himself guided. However, no one in the group said anything. Reluctantly, Sheng Nanzhou sent several red envelopes in a row. Su Sui didn't hesitate to tap on them and quickly replied with messages. The next second, the group was flooded with messages as people claimed their red envelopes. Naturally, they had to reply. Sheng Nanzhou complained about the band not having a name yet, offering 500 yuan as a reward for the best name. Su Sui smiled slightly, seemingly already knowing what he wanted to call them. The name actually fit this band well, but with so many messages it was quickly brushed aside. Zhou Jinze spoke up. If Su Sui said yes earlier, they would go with Sigh of Heartache. Saying goodbye to his usual calm life, Su Sui originally thought it was just a regular competition, until he saw the notice board and realized it was an inter-school event. But by now, it was too late to change his mind. As Su Sui was still in shock, Shi Yuejie, the former classmate, quietly stood behind him very close. Su Sui recognized her as a senior and greeted her politely. Shi Yuejie seemed troubled, but said she wanted to invite Su Sui to form a band. With a broad gesture, Zhou Jinze handed over his phone. "Senior brother, you're too late. Su Sui had already joined the neighboring school's team for the competition." Su Sui frowned and asked how he knew. Before he could say anything else, the kind senior brother stopped him with a hint of rivalry in his tone. Shi Yuejie spoke gently but firmly, like a warm breeze that couldn't be ignored. Several girls were surprised to find themselves in trouble and left with disappointed faces. As the door opened, Sheng Yi was already waiting for them. Without allowing Su Sui to speak, she pulled him along, saying they would play an elegant intellectual game. Only when they sat at the mahjong table did Su Sui realize what it was about. But he had no idea how to play and couldn't refuse his aunt's invitation. Reluctantly, he took out his phone to inform Zhou Jinze. Su Sui didn't understand why he asked this, but didn't know how to answer either. Thankfully, he just shook his head. Maybe Zhou Jinze saw him as a close friend of his niece? On Saturday at St. Jia, Su Sui had to start his tutoring again. Seeing Xiaochuan Mao's deep expression, Su Sui prepared for the usual routine. Study an hour and play an hour. Xiaochuan Mao immediately perked up, sitting upright in pain. Su Sui's routine was a series of loops. After this break, he watched an English-speaking training film. Seeing his plan succeed, the bad teacher waved goodbye with a mischievous smile. He had something important to do. As she opened the door, Sheng Yi was already waiting for them. Not allowing Su Sui to speak, she dragged him along, saying they would play a highbrow intellectual game. Only when they were seated at the mahjong table did Su Sui realize what it was about. But he had no idea how to play and couldn't refuse his aunt's invitation. Reluctantly, he took out his phone to inform Zhou Jinze. As Sheng Yi played, she seemed too engrossed in the game to notice Zhou Jinze's messages. Was he looking for help? Or was he going to call her on the phone and let her off the hook? Sheng Yi, who had been winning, was clearly not satisfied and urged Su Sui to play his cards. But Su Sui couldn't focus. Every card looked difficult. Zhou Jinze's hand suddenly appeared in front of him, holding a 2-dragon tile. "Play this one." Su Sui hesitated as Zhou Jinze appeared before him. Black jacket, gray pants, thin lips and prominent nose, always ready to play. Like an elegant intellectual game, Su Sui was genuinely bad at it. Seeing Zhou Jinze come for him, Sheng Yi didn't let go. As usual, they had 20 minutes late. The others were already practicing seriously when Su Sui entered with a smile of apology. Sheng Nanzhou was so angry he wanted to kick off his shoes but held back. He threatened to buy them dinner later and then started the practice. Zhou Jinzi's explanation about not wearing a uniform didn't work as well as he hoped. As they passed someone, Shu Sui naturally grabbed his arm, pulling him aside. Shu Sui's sharp chin hit his shoulder, their faces inches apart. Shu Sui saw his strong jawline and the power in it. The wind blew between them, and Shu Sui felt the warmth of his bones. His heart raced uncontrollably. Zhou Jinze wasn't wrong. He just didn't know who to play with. He held Shu Sui as they passed, reminding him to be careful. As they entered the practice room late, everyone was already practicing seriously. A click echoed as Shu Sui entered with a smile of apology. Sheng Nanzhou was so angry he wanted to kick off his shoes but held back. He threatened to buy them dinner later and then started the practice. The goal was to improve their chemistry, but they received only mocking glances from everyone. Sheng Nanzhou looked at Zhou Jinze for help, who just turned his drumsticks. Time seemed to go back as he played, reminding Shu Sui of that year when he was young and full of joy. His father, a firefighter, was always busy but never complained. The melody from the piano interrupted his thoughts. It was familiar, the long-lost sound. Shu Sui's eyes no longer held the same closeness, but his hands moved gracefully as if it were second nature. At that moment, only the music mattered. Zhou Jinze seemed to have shed his usual rebelliousness. As they entered the practice room late, everyone was already practicing seriously. A click echoed as Shu Sui entered with a smile of apology. Sheng Nanzhou was so angry he wanted to kick off his shoes but held back. He threatened to buy them dinner later and then started the practice. The goal was to improve their chemistry. Zhou Jinze's explanation about not wearing a uniform didn't work as well as he hoped. As they passed someone, Shu Sui naturally grabbed his arm, pulling him aside. Shu Sui's sharp chin hit his shoulder, their faces inches apart. Shu Sui saw his strong jawline and the power in it. The wind blew between them, and Shu Sui felt the warmth of his bones. His heart raced uncontrollably. Zhou Jinze wasn't wrong. He just didn't know who to play with. He sat in front of Shu Sui's shoes for the first time, able to look at him openly. In high school, Shu Sui used to study alone. That day it rained heavily, and as he passed someone's classroom, they were making a commotion. Zhou Jinze's admiration was not shared by Sheng Nanzhou, who was upset but silenced by Hu Qianxi. Meanwhile, Da Liu asked the question everyone wanted to know. Boss Zhou, your level is top-notch, like a concert hall in a national theater. Didn't you say you were going to Austria for further music studies? Why are you suffering now? There's a kind of love that never says it but silently protects, and even disrupts when someone else tries to pursue the other. Su Sui didn't know why Zhou Jinze chose this uncertain path, only knowing that the matter caused a big commotion at the time. Walking by with his head down on his phone, Wen Yan smiled slightly but didn't reply. Da Liu curiously picked up his hair and looked at Sheng Nanzhou, who only shrugged his shoulders. Just as Sheng Nanzhou was about to say something, a boy walked over from the side. He approached Hu Qianxi and shyly said, "Can I have your phone number?" Today, Hu Qianxi wore a black jacket and black pants for band practice, with smoky makeup on her face. She pointed at herself and asked, "Me?" The boy scratched his head and replied, "Yeah, but I won't bother you in the evening." However, as soon as Hu Qianxi agreed, a large hand suddenly pressed down on her phone. "Buddy, are you short-sighted or nearsighted? Do you need me to take you for an eye check?" "Sheng Nanzhou," two voices said at the same time. "Have you thought it over? This girl has too many issues. Don't be fooled by his appearance. He's stupid and has a bad temper." Sheng Nanzhou spoke earnestly, listing several of his flaws without noticing Hu Qianxi's expression. After sending off the boy, Sheng Nanzhou was unusually excited, but Hu Qianxi had a cold look on her face. They stood together, with Sheng Nanzhou lazily prodding Hu Qianxi's shoulder and urging her to hurry up. "Let's go eat!" "Don't touch me!" Hu Qianxi raised her voice sharply, pulling away Sheng Nanzhou's hand. Before she could speak, a hot tear fell on his hand. "Why is it like this? Why do you hate me so much for everything?" Sheng Nanzhou felt a bit anxious and instinctively wanted to wipe the tears from his face. However, Hu Qianxi took a step back and looked at him with eyes full of confusion before running away without waiting for an explanation. Sheng Nanzhou was completely flustered, standing there in shock as Da Liu looked on with disbelief. They've never acted like this before. Zhou Jinze smiled ambiguously. As Zhou Jinze and his friends were about to go eat, his phone suddenly rang. Zhou Jinze turned back, frowning anxiously. He had something to do. He was leaving first. Entering the Zhou family villa, Aunt Tao greeted him warmly as she came out to meet him. Seeing it was Zhou Jinze, her voice was filled with excitement. Aunt Tao had been in the Zhou household since childhood and had cared for Zhou Jinze when his mother was alive. Zhou Jinze entered without paying attention to Aunt Tao's shoulder and sat down on the sofa. His smile faded as he saw Zhou Zhengyan's stern face. Aunt Tao left, leaving space for the father-son duo. "Grandfather? How is he?" The doctor came over, but after checking him found nothing wrong and sent him home. Zhou Jinze stared at Zhou Zhengyan with sharp eyes for a second before realizing he had been tricked by this old man again. Was it really concern that clouded his judgment? He wasn't sure if he should be angry or laugh. Zhou Jinze sat on the sofa, raising his eyebrows, and asked, "What's the matter? Did you specially bring me here to tell me some nonsense like 'live long as the sea, live forever'? I can't say such insincere words." Zhou Jinze smirked. Zhou Zhengyan finally got up to help. Zhou Jinze watched them silently from the empty living room. He lit a cigarette and took 2 puffs before getting up to leave when someone called his name. "Jinze!" Zhou Jinze stopped mid-action, but there was no smile on his face. The caller was Zhao Yan, Zhou Zhengyan's personal secretary, in a professional suit with an alluring red lipstick. Zhou Jinze felt a mix of hatred and embarrassment towards his father. He didn't hate him, he just found him annoying. They exchanged pleasantries before Zhao Yan handed over a document, part ownership of the company, and 2 properties as a gift. After listening for a while, Zhou Jinze realized that Zhou Zhengyan was finally starting to compensate him. He interrupted the secretary and said, "Just sign it." Zhao Yan hesitated but nodded and passed the pen and contract over. Zhou Jinze lazily sat on the sofa, turning the pen left and right as he looked at Zhou Zhengyan. Zhou Zhengyan seemed uneasy. Zhou Jinze glanced at him and scoffed. "You can tell me you just ate with Da Liu." Zhou Jinze had eaten earlier, but wanted to spend time alone with Hu Qianxi. To ease his mood, Zhou Jinze suggested adding vinegar to the soup. He added a few drops carefully. After tasting it, Zhou Jinze nodded, and they fell into silence. However, Zhou Jinze's head injury worried him again. Zhou Zhengyan seemed down, so Zhou Jinze tried telling jokes he had read online. But Zhou Jinze didn't laugh at all until the end, when they finished eating. Zhou Jinze often came to this restaurant, and the owner greeted him with a deep breath. Zhou Jinze looked puzzled as he prepared to leave. "What's wrong? It was so funny." After packing food for Hu Qianxi earlier, Xu Miansheng had run into an injured Zhou Jinze, who had just gotten out of a taxi. They ended up having dinner together despite already eating with Da Liu. To cheer him up, Xu Miansheng started telling jokes, but to no avail. Zhou Jinze remained expressionless until the end. At last, Xu Miansheng decided to try his big move. He patted Zhou Jinze's shoulder and asked, "What are you doing?" Zhou Jinze turned around sharply. "What?" Xu Miansheng wore a hoodie today, but had put on a hat without realizing it. His eyes were wide open as he made a silly face, but his innocent eyes lacked any intimidation. Instead, they looked cute. Zhou Jinze raised an eyebrow. "What are you doing?" Xu Miansheng's eyes were blank as he tried to act like a ghost. "Why aren't you laughing?" "What kind of ghost?" The answer made Zhou Jinze laugh uncontrollably. His chest shook, and his breaths became irregular. He finally revealed his first genuine smile that night. Finally, you're smiling. Students had long since gone to bed, while others were still playing music and writing love letters in their notebooks. After a bath, Xu Miansheng picked up his phone and saw a message from Zhou Jinze with the special note ZJZ. Although it only said, "Thanks for tonight," it made Xu Miansheng very happy. Xu Miansheng typed, "You're welcome," but felt too formal. He deleted it and sent another, "Are you there?" The screen on his phone lit up again 2 minutes later with a reply from Zhou Jinze. "Good night." He hoped he would have a good dream that night, alone with his dreams. Seeing Zhou Jinze curled up in the corner with closed eyes, Xu Miansheng felt a pang of concern. It turned out he really had a fear of enclosed spaces. Xu Miansheng heard his phone vibrate and wondered who was messaging him so late at night. It was Zhou Jinze's persistent request for help, to convince Hu Qianxi to meet him, as she refused to see him after an argument. Despite knowing her stance, Zhou Jinze still tried to deceive her by lying that he had won a flying competition and wanted to treat her. Xu Miansheng was nervous, but decided to use his big move. He patted Zhou Jinze's shoulder and asked, "What are you doing?" Zhou Jinze turned around sharply. "What?" Xu Miansheng wore a hoodie with the hat on. His eyes were wide open as he made a silly face, but his innocent eyes lacked any intimidation. Instead, they looked cute. Zhou Jinze raised an eyebrow. "What are you doing?" Xu Miansheng's eyes were blank as he tried to act like a ghost. "Why aren't you laughing?" "What kind of ghost?" The answer made Zhou Jinze laugh uncontrollably. His chest shook, and his breaths became irregular. He finally revealed his first genuine smile that night. Finally, you're smiling. Students had long since gone to bed, while others were still playing music and writing love letters in their notebooks. After a bath, Xu Miansheng picked up his phone and saw a message from Zhou Jinze with the special note ZJZ. Although it only said, "Thanks for tonight," it made Xu Miansheng very happy. Xu Miansheng smiled as he replied, "Good night." The message brought him immense joy. He received another reply from Zhou Jinze, "Good night tonight." He hoped he would have a good dream that night, alone with his dreams. Seeing Zhou Jinze curled up in the corner with closed eyes, Xu Miansheng felt a pang of concern. It turned out he really had a fear of enclosed spaces. Hearing his phone vibrate again, Xu Miansheng wondered who was messaging him so late at night. It was Zhou Jinze's persistent request for help, to convince Hu Qianxi to meet him, as she refused to see him after an argument and couldn't even apologize properly. Despite knowing her stance, Zhou Jinze still tried to deceive her by lying that he had won a flying competition and wanted to treat her. Xu Miansheng was nervous, but decided to use his big move. He patted Zhou Jinze's shoulder and asked, "What are you doing?" Zhou Jinze turned around sharply. "What?" Xu Miansheng wore a hoodie with the hat on. His eyes were wide open as he made a silly face, but his innocent eyes lacked any intimidation. Instead, they looked cute. Zhou Jinze raised an eyebrow. "What are you doing?" Xu Miansheng's eyes were blank as he tried to act like a ghost. "Why aren't you laughing?" "What kind of ghost?" The answer made Zhou Jinze laugh uncontrollably. His chest shook, and his breaths became irregular. He finally revealed his first genuine smile that night. Finally, you're smiling. Students had long since gone to bed, while others were still playing music and writing love letters in their notebooks. After a bath, Xu Miansheng picked up his phone and saw a message from Zhou Jinze with the special note ZJZ. Although it only said, "Thanks for tonight," it made Xu Miansheng very happy. Hearing his phone vibrate again, Xu Miansheng smiled as he replied, "Good night." The message brought him immense joy. He received another reply from Zhou Jinze, "Good night, tonight." He hoped he would have a good dream that night, alone with his dreams. Seeing Zhou Jinze curled up in the corner with closed eyes, Xu Miansheng felt a pang of concern. It turned out he really had a fear of enclosed spaces. Hearing his phone vibrate again, Xu Miansheng wondered who was messaging him so late at night. It was Zhou Jinze's persistent request for help, to convince Hu Qianxi to meet him, as she refused to see him after an argument and couldn't even apologize properly. Despite knowing her stance, Zhou Jinze still tried to deceive her by lying that he had won a helicopter competition and wanted to treat her. Fake, so I quickly hid behind Zhou Jinze's back. Watching Xu Su's actions, Zhou Jinze looked sternly at Hu Qianxi and defended him, saying, "I taught him." Then he left the meeting to teach them a lesson, while taking Xu Su downstairs to buy cigarettes for some fresh air. When it came time to pay, Xu Su's stomach rumbled just then, making him feel embarrassed. His stomach really knows when to cause trouble. Zhou Jinze naturally chuckled with affection and ignored Xu Su's refusal, ordering him a hot pot, sweet and savory. He then took care of his embarrassment and went outside alone for some fresh air. At that moment, it was unbearable. After getting food, Xu Su pulled out the chair and sat behind him. There was only a transparent glass between them. Xu Su couldn't help but look up at the broad back in front of him while enjoying the food he gave him. Now he could openly admire him, even if it was just his back. When they finally got on the elevator, Xu Su still worried about whether they would reconcile. Zhou Jinze was about to say something when suddenly the elevator broke down and the lights went out, scaring Xu Su so much that he turned around and shouted Zhou Jinze's name. "Quickly fly away. I can't see anyone. I tried calling for help on my phone but found no signal, only turning on the flashlight and pressing the emergency button to report the situation." After doing all this, Xu Su was still very scared, urging them to hurry up. Then he remembered that Zhou Jinze had a fear of darkness. Sure enough, his condition shocked him. Under the light, he saw Zhou Jinze huddled in a corner with his eyes closed and rapid breathing. In Xu Su's memory, Zhou Jinze was always full of vigor, but he never expected to see such a vulnerable side. He was trapped in deep nightmares, tormented by his childhood abuse at his father's hands. Each beating made the already sick Zhou Jinze feel even worse, begging for mercy only to receive harsher insults from his father. Seeing Zhou Jinze's suffering now, Xu Su anxiously called out his name beside him, but there was no response. His phone had also run out of power and shut off. In the darkness, he could only rely on memory to find his way to Zhou Jinze. Knowing that his UB fear had flared up, Xu Su felt immense sympathy for him, but his condition was severe. No matter how hard he pushed or called out to him, there was no response. He still hugged himself, shivering in the depths of his psychological shadow. Those scenes surrounded him like drowning, suffocating him. The fear made his body feel cold. Suddenly, a warm sensation came from his wrist, and he faintly heard a girl calling his name. Zhou Jinze finally escaped his nightmare, slowly opening his eyes. Xu Su's gentle voice comforted him. "Don't be afraid, it's okay." Xu Su had finally woken him up, and Zhou Jinze instinctively reached out to touch Xu Su. His hand was held tightly, their index fingers interlocked. Feeling the warmth from Xu Su's palm, Zhou Jinze's agitated emotions calmed down. After returning to the room, Wu Jianxi had already recovered his usual attitude and was talking with Sheng Nanzhou. Seeing only Xu Su return, he asked about his uncle's whereabouts. Given what happened, he naturally left first and settled the bill. Wu Jianxi started complaining that Sheng Nanzhou was too frugal. Watching them bicker, Xu Su felt relieved as they reconciled. But remembering what had just happened, his mood plummeted, feeling uncomfortable. He was always carefree in public, doing everything with ease and arrogance. But privately, he was kind to girls and attentive. Such a boy should be loved more, but fate gave him the opposite condition. Xu Su thought it might have something to do with his family. Maybe he had feelings for girls. After completing his teaching duties on Saturday, Xu Su ignored Sheng Nanzhou's complaints and rushed over to practice. But they all appeared at the door simultaneously. It turned out that this time, they were meeting at Zhou Jinze's house because it had a guest room, making it convenient for Xu Su to visit. Xu Su was stunned, but secretly excited as he agreed. Going to his place? He had never been there before. However, after ringing the doorbell for a long time with no response, a dog named Demu barked from inside the window. Zhou Jinze's eyes lit up as he instructed him. "Gao Ye, 快叫你爹起床." Since it was Xu Su's first visit, He asked if this dog belonged to Zhou Jinze. Just then, the protagonist appeared, but his face was gloomy and puffy, clearly not well rested. When he finally saw Su Su at the door, he slammed the door shut with a, "Haha, Zhou Jinze, what are you rushing for? Afraid of leaving a bad impression on someone you like?" After they entered, Zhou Jinze opened the doorbell and then brought out drinks from the fridge to serve them. Big Liu was excited and envious that the house was so big and empty, perfect for parties. Zhou Jinze paused at his words, agreeing that it was only him now. He tried to mask his bitterness as he let them choose their own drinks. As Big Liu approached, he was shocked again by the sheer number of beverages. Zhou Jinze laughed carelessly, saying there were no other options but plenty of drinks. Then Big Liu eagerly asked to see the guest room. Su Su had been paying attention to Zhou Jinze's emotions since entering, noticing that he seemed more relaxed and like his old self. "Are you really okay?" Leading everyone into the guest room, Big Liu was so impressed that he wanted to lie down. Even usually calm Su Su couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Su Su's voice caught Zhou Jinze's attention as he explained what happened at the door. He introduced himself as Quados. Zhou Jinze's sudden statement left Su Su confused until he realized he had heard his question from outside. Quados is a good name. Su Su underestimated how much it hurt to be in love. Everyone was discussing which song to perform when Sheng Nanzhou and Big Liu suggested songs that were either too soft or too outlandish. Hu Qianxi listened with exasperation until Su Su weakly spoke up, drawing Zhou Jinze's attention. He secretly hoped for his answer. Sure enough, Su Su surprised him by suggesting Brave by Mayday, proposing an adapted version of the song that fit their situation perfectly. "I really like it." Before Zhou Jinze could react, Sheng Nanzhou interrupted. He teased, "How do you know Brave by Mayday? Did someone give it to you?" Zhou Jinze casually replied, "I get so many gifts." Heartfelt love is the most touching, but also the most painful. From their first meeting, from the moment he saw him, and even when he offered his seat, Su Su was conquered by Zhou Jinze's kindness. But how deep the love ran, the higher the hopes, the more the disappointment hurt. Zhou Jinze's casual remark that there were so many people who gave him gifts made Su Su realize it was all one-sided. Su Su noticed something amiss and asked about his condition to avoid worrying Hu Qianxi. He forced a smile, saying he was fine. But how could anything be okay? The pain in his heart must have been immense. So, Su Su left with an excuse of feeling unwell, alone. Everyone cared. Even Hu Qianxi wanted to stay with him, but he just wanted some peace. Zhou Jinze clearly didn't want him to go, but Su Su reassured that everything was fine and went home to send a message for safety. Zhou Jinze seemed very worried, but Su Su comforted him again, saying it would be okay. Nearby girls were discussing birthday gifts for someone else. Su Su advised not giving them things they liked, feeling the same pain as before when he had given his own hopes. Back then, he was so hopeful about the gifts he sent in high school, but Zhou Jinze didn't even remember receiving them or opening them. The heavens seemed to want him to suffer more. After practice, Sheng Nanzhou asked again, "Do you really not remember who gave it?" Zhou Jinze replied nonchalantly, "So many people give me gifts." Heartfelt love is the most touching, but also the most painful. From their first meeting, from the moment he saw him, and even when he offered his seat, Su Su was conquered by Zhou Jinze's kindness. But how deep the love ran, the higher the hopes, the more the disappointment hurt. Zhou Jinze's casual remark that there were so many people who gave him gifts made Su Su realize it was all one-sided. For years, he had been in love with someone who didn't feel the same way. Su Su noticed something amiss and asked about his condition to avoid worrying Hu Qianxi. He forced a smile, saying everything was fine. But how could anything be okay? The pain must have been immense. So Su Su left with an excuse of feeling unwell, alone. Everyone cared. Even Hu Qianxi wanted to stay with him, but he just needed some peace. Nearby girls were discussing birthday gifts for someone else. He didn't suggest giving them things they liked, the same pain he felt when he had given his own hopes. Back then, he was so hopeful about the gifts he sent. But what did he get in return? He barely even saw it and couldn't remember who gave it. In high school, he had even tied him up. 3 years ago, Su transferred to Class 3 because of his introverted personality and plain looks, not attracting much attention from classmates. They treated him like a transparent person. When he noticed the stool was missing, he asked nearby classmates, but no one cared. Collided with from behind and drew a gun, then accidentally stepped on the shoe in front of him. Seeing that clear shoe print, Su Sui-chung was startled and quickly apologized. But unexpectedly, the person wasn't angry. Instead, his proper manners and enthusiasm surprised Su Sui-chung. But when he saw his face, it was even more stunning. This was their first meeting, and the boy's charm deeply attracted him. Su Sui-chung stared at him blankly and nodded, while Zhou Jinze still replied with 2 words. Wait. Then he quickly ran off with the basketball. 10 minutes later, he appeared panting from carrying a chair from the 5th floor, gently placing it in front of Su Sui-chung. Su Sui-chung thanked him, but before they could say more, Zhou Jinze called out to other classmates who were impatiently waiting for him to finish playing ball. In a rush, Zhou Jinze ran away again, brushing past his hand unintentionally this time. This back and forth had unknowingly captured Su Sui-chung's heart. At that moment, he felt suffocated. This was the pain of unrequited love after all these years. 10 years of waiting turned out to be just a fantasy for him. He was tired, so Su Sui-chung decided to withdraw his heart from Zhou Jinze. The initial help in their youth had made Su Sui-chung feel safe. His eyes always followed the boy's figure, hoping each time they changed seats he would sit closer. The only way to get close was through homework collection. His heart couldn't help but be happy at these moments. After secretly liking him for a year, they met again. On this day, Su Sui-chung heard 2 girls excitedly call out Zhou Jinze's name while fetching water. Hearing the footsteps behind her, Su Sui-chung's body stiffened. She had come to fetch water too. She couldn't look directly, but could sneak glances at his hands, which trembled slightly under the weight of their injuries. Su Sui-chung felt heartache. His hands must hurt a lot. After this brief encounter, Zhou Jinze left silently after fetching water. But his concern didn't lessen as he heard from other girls that his birthday was soon approaching. He wanted to send her a gift. Despite the sweltering heat, Su Sui-chung went to the music hall, pharmacy, and instrument shop in order. She packed Mayday's album, case, and bandage into 2 beautiful boxes. The care she put into the gifts showed how much she liked Zhou Jinze. She didn't expect anything in return, but hoped his wounds would heal faster. Just as she was about to place the gift on Zhou Jinze's desk, a sudden commotion scared her. Not only did they mock Su Sui-chung for her intentions, but they also insulted her looks and figure, saying that Zhou Jinze wouldn't like someone like her. The sound of their laughter made Su Sui-chung feel very embarrassed. Just then, a basketball hit the boy who was about to curse. Seeing it was Zhou Jinze, he deflated instantly. Zhou Jinze scolded him for such behavior, clearly having heard their conversation. He walked up to Su Sui-chung, and she felt ashamed. Zhou Jinze saw this and decided the best way to handle it was to accept the gift openly. Hearing his voice, Su Sui-chung raised her wet eyes and looked at him. Although there was an unexpected turn of events, the gift had been successfully delivered. Zhou Jinze thanked her for the gift, and she responded with a casual, "You're welcome." She then lowered her head and quickly left. Su Sui-chung knew that Zhou Jinze hadn't done anything wrong. He accepted the gift out of respect and helped him during rehearsals. His kindness had remained unchanged. The hat wasn't special, and the gift was just one among many ordinary ones. Even though it hadn't been opened, this gesture felt wasted. A sense of sorrow filled her heart as she considered giving up. Since being hurt by Zhou Jinze's actions, Su Sui-chung no longer joined their gatherings. Huan Nanzhou noticed something was off and asked Hu Qixi about it. Zhou Jinze looked down, feeling a bit uncomfortable. He wished he had discovered Su Sui-chung's situation earlier. His smile that day was fake. However, he ignored Huan Nanzhou's words and replied with, "The soup is good." Huan Nanzhou's suspicion grew, but was interrupted by Hu Qixi, who said Su Sui-chung just had exam stress. On the vast rooftop, the gray sky reflected her inner turmoil. The usual family greetings brought a smile to her face as she reassured her mother that she didn't need to worry. But when her grandmother asked if it was cold, with concern in her voice, the pain grew. She felt comforted by her grandmother's care, but wanted to complain and seek comfort. It was still a bit cold, which made her grandmother worried. She comforted her, saying she wouldn't be cold indoors. As she hung up, she realized how cold it was on the rooftop. Su Sui-chung was afraid of the cold. He had come from the south to study in the north for his unfulfilled dreams. Zhou Jinze's words shattered those dreams. He decided to stay away and not see him again. But loving someone couldn't be forgotten so easily. From the moment he stood on the rooftop, from when he became part of Zhou Jinze's circle, and every time he opened his social media, their lives had intersected. This decision was only one-sided, and he couldn't control his desire to get closer to Zhou Jinze. To truly escape him, he needed to leave places where Zhou Jinze wasn't. After being hurt by Zhou Jinze's attitude, Su Sui-chung decided to give up on her feelings for him. While she still paid attention subconsciously, it didn't mean she would give in. Since she couldn't control her heart, she controlled her actions around him. It was time for practice again. The cold wind blew as Zhou Jinze blamed Hu Qixi for being too slow to open the door. After 3 hours of intense practice, he was already weeping on the sofa. Suddenly, his attention was drawn to a tangerine. He asked if they could eat it. Su Sui-chung replied indifferently and picked one up to share with them. Since it wasn't her home, she asked Hu Qixi where the knife was. Hu Qixi pointed to the kitchen. As Su Sui-chung searched, he heard a familiar voice from behind. The owner of that voice was Zhou Jinze. He opened a cabinet and took out a knife, then handed the tangerine to Su Sui-chung. As the tangerine was cut open, its scent filled the room. Zhou Jinze wanted to talk with her. "Have you been busy?" Su Sui-chung nervously replied no. Soon, the tangerine was sliced in half and offered to him. He didn't rush out but leaned against the counter, watching Su Sui-chung silently. Her silence made Zhou Jinze unsure of how to approach her again. Finally, Su Sui-chung couldn't resist looking at him secretly, only to be caught by his sharp gaze. Zhou Jinze then asked if she was avoiding him. Su Sui-chung was surprised. She hadn't expected him to notice, but denied it. Because of his busy studies and her distant behavior, he felt a painful sense of helplessness. He knew she was lying, but Zhou Jinze didn't confront her directly. He just replied casually, "It's okay." He would find another chance to talk with her later. After noticing Su Sui-chung trying to avoid him, Zhou Jinze wanted to change things, but couldn't when she gave him no opportunity. He silently watched as she left again. After the rehearsal ended, Wu Qixi wanted to invite Shu Sui for dinner, but he said he had to tutor Sheng Yan's family. Once they mentioned it, Sheng Nanzhou even started praising Shu Sui as a god. "He actually got high scores in this exam." Immediately, Wu Qixi boasted proudly about her sister. Shu Sui didn't get arrogant. Instead, he proved his hard work to the Shengs. With time being tight, they had to rush over after finishing their talk. Suddenly, Zhou Jinze walked ahead of Shu Sui. "I'm going that way today too. Let's go together." The little Sheng Yan was frowning and complaining about no love as he talked about the heavy homework this week. Shu Sui smiled and comforted him. But it didn't affect how much their teacher liked him. Hearing this, Sheng Yan's face turned slightly red, his whole body suddenly uneasy. He stopped Shu Sui, thinking maybe he wanted to play with him again. This time, Zhou Jinze would be accompanying him. Then, he took out 2 movie tickets from a drawer and asked if Shu Sui wanted to go see a film together. Shu Sui smiled and agreed without much thought. Sheng Yan's face lit up immediately. "You have to come, okay?" As Shu Sui walked to the door, he turned back and agreed again. Just then, Sheng Nanzhou came in and invited Shu Sui for dinner. Shu Sui looked at Zhou Jinze behind him with a faint expression before saying he had to go teach. Once more rejected, Sheng Nanzhou's face couldn't help but show some displeasure. But Shu Sui pretended not to see it and asked Sheng Nanzhou to thank Sheng Ni for the invitation. He walked past Zhou Jinze without a word. Seeing the distance in Shu Sui's eyes, Zhou Jinze felt a sharp pain, but could only silently watch her leave. Sheng Nanzhou was focused on Shu Sui, not noticing Zhou Jinze's discomfort, and saying that Shu Sui had been acting strange lately. How could she not know? She was the source of Hu Huo's problems. How could she not save him now? So this anger was directed at the game, making Sheng Yan suffer greatly. Seeing Sheng Yan smiling instead of crying, Zhou Jinze asked curiously, "You're so happy because you invited Miss Shu to watch a movie?" His joy was clear on his face. "You have good eyesight, but why try to crush her confidence? Little brat, you can't even write love letters properly. Do you like her? Besides, Miss Shu has been paid for this. How could she like someone who loves games and doesn't do well in studies like you? A fat Jai?" Sheng Yan cried as Zhou Jinze pushed him out the door. "Brother, I hate you! You don't know what love is!" With a bang, Zhou Jinze was shut out. He replayed Sheng Yan's words in his mind. It seemed everyone said so, and they even said she hadn't thought about her future with them. Zhou Jinze smiled bitterly. A joke. She didn't even know where her own future lay. In the past, Shu Sui would get nervous seeing Zhou Jinze. Now, he only felt pity for her. So he tried to avoid contact as much as possible. Seeing Shu Sui's distance again, Zhou Jinze wanted to change things but was helpless. This time, he followed Sheng Yan just to watch the movie and keep an eye on this boy. However, Sheng Yan was still angry with Zhou Jinze when she suddenly noticed a familiar figure in her peripheral vision. Her beloved Miss Shu had come. She called out happily to Shu Sui. As Shu Sui approached, he froze at the sight of Zhou Jinze. He used to see her so rarely. Now that he wanted to give up, she kept appearing before him. Shu Sui didn't ask why she was there, but ignored her and greeted Sheng Yan with a smile. Zhou Jinze silently watched her smile, his heart hurting again. This made him even more determined to remove the thorn from Shu Sui's heart. When asked what movie Shu Sui wanted to watch, she surprised Zhou Jinze again. It turned out that Shu Sui liked horror movies. Zhou Jinze smiled indulgently and wondered, "Shu Sui, how many more surprises are you hiding?" Zhou Jinze wasn't particularly interested in horror movies. The Sheng Yan family was frightened by the plot, but Shu Sui watched with great seriousness. Suddenly, a hint of displeasure flashed in Zhou Jinze's eyes, because this little brat tried to pour something over Shu Sui as an opportunity. Zhou Jinze chuckled and said, "You're still too young to be trying to take advantage. Grab him back." "All right, stay quiet until the movie ends." Shu Sui didn't make a sound throughout, even taking out his phone to snap pictures. In contrast, Sheng Yan family was nearly traumatized. But Shu Sui didn't notice and posted on WeChat moments only visible to himself. It looked like he was in a dream, with clear satisfaction on his face. Zhou Jinze couldn't help but smile as he asked, "That's it?" Shu Sui was shaken. She hadn't expected him to notice her emotions. Suddenly feeling happy, she openly admitted her love for horror movies. Shu Sui finally forgave Zhou Jinze. Her admiration for Zhou Jinze stemmed from his cultivation and attentiveness. Now, in order to help him get a doll with sentimental value, she had no choice but to shamelessly ask the staff. This behavior made Sheng Yan family laugh, and her internal conflict disappeared. After leaving the cinema, Sheng Yan family was attracted by the toy machine, urging Zhou Jinze to change game coins. Shu Sui, touched by his innocence, smiled sweetly. Before leaving, Zhou Jinze reminded Shu Sui that it wasn't far away. But as he walked off, Shu Sui's gaze was drawn to something in front of her. She stepped inside and saw a stack of cabbage dolls neatly arranged in the machine. Shu Sui stared at them, her eyes filled with sadness. Zhou Jinze approached and asked, "Want one?" Of course she wanted it because when she was young, her father was busy working, so he bought one to keep her company. Later, her father passed away, and the doll got lost during a move. Despite feeling sad inside, she said with a smile that she didn't need him anymore as she grew up. How could Zhou Jinze not understand? It's just a doll. He was rash in his promise to Shu Sui, saying he would give her one too. He really is young and naive about the world. Cabbage dolls are notorious for being expensive. thinking that adding more money means getting it. Don't be too happy yet. When you pull the lever to lift the toy, he had already quietly let it drop from its claw. The gap seemed small, but was actually far. Both of them looked disappointed at the falling toy. Zhou Jinze's face showed embarrassment as he continued operating the machine. It's okay, try again. Next time we'll definitely get it. 15 minutes later, over 100 coins had flowed into the stone mountain abyss, but they didn't even catch a glimpse of a doll. This left Zhou Jinze nearly depressed, but he still went to change more game coins. Su Sui stopped him again and said, "Forget it, I really don't want one that much." Little cheat. You clearly wanted it just now. Behind them, the staff announced they were going to place dolls. Zhou Jinze's eyes lit up at the sight of the cabbage dolls in the basket, wanting to buy them. The staff was speechless and said firmly, "Absolutely not. Otherwise, how can we continue to scam people?" But Zhou Jinze persisted, even offering a high price. Su Sui gently advised him to give up, but the money could buy one online instead. Yet he didn't lose hope and still wanted to buy it. Su Sui found this amusing and simply pulled him away by holding his arm, not helping Su Sui get the toy. Zhou Jinze was very unwilling to accept defeat, while Su Sui just stared at him blankly. At that moment, he forgave Zhou Jinze in his heart. Who cared? He truly deserved his affection, and he couldn't control himself either. Love overcame his pride. Su Sui forgave Zhou Jinze and decided to confess to him, but not with his true feelings. Instead, he told them they were classmates from high school. Hearing this for the first time, Zhou Jinze felt a pang of guilt. When they came out of the cinema, it started snowing outside. Children have zero resistance to cold. After getting permission from Zhou Jinze, Su Sui ran out ahead. So Su Sui suggested sitting on an outdoor bench and waiting for him. As a southerner, the sudden drop in temperature made Su Sui shiver uncontrollably. Careful as Zhou Jinze was, he noticed this and bought him a bottle of warm drink, like at their last gathering. Su Sui took it from his hand, surprised to find it hot. He looked at Zhou Jinze gratefully, feeling his heart race with the warmth in his palm. It was this attentiveness that deeply attracted Su Sui. Not just him, but he also wanted a boyfriend like this who could warm his heart. As a Northeastern man, he simply felt satisfied, and then remembered Su Sui's unusual behavior earlier. He guessed it might be because of Sheng Nanzhou's joke, or if he did something wrong. Su Sui lowered his eyes and shook his head. They hadn't done anything wrong. It was just that he wasn't noticed back then. So, Su Sui didn't reveal the real reason, but instead told Zhou Jinze they were classmates from high school with hope. Zhou Jinze was stunned by this answer. Clearly, he hadn't expected such a response. With the first encounter as a foundation, this time Su Sui remained calm. It didn't matter if he couldn't remember, did it? Zhou Jinze repeated Su Sui's name in his mind, searching for memories of high school. Indeed, there was a girl who often asked him to collect homework. He also heard classmates betting on who would win the race beside them. The side profile of that girl matched Su Sui's now. Recalling this overlap, he realized it was indeed Su Sui. A pang of guilt surged as he felt remorse. They were truly high school classmates, but he had never noticed her. "You've changed a lot. I'm sorry." Though the apology came late, Su Sui had already forgiven him and accepted it. After all, back then, he wasn't outstanding. But you are now, worthy of Zhou Jinze's pursuit. Seeing his drink bottle fall made him slightly surprised. Zhou Jinze looked at Su Sui seriously and said, "Let's get to know each other again." At this moment, Su Sui was very happy because he had finally entered Zhou Jinze's life from being a nobody. For the first time, Zhou Jinze remembered him, making his presence known in his life. All the suffering he endured was worth it. Now he could get closer to his heart's desire. Su Sui has always felt for Zhou Jinze with an open heart. Despite feeling a twinge of pain from Zhu Yue's reminder, they were all in fair competition, so he wouldn't back down. Time quickly brought them to the campfire challenge site. Jingxing's backstage makeup room was bustling. Suddenly, someone spilled their drink on Su Sui. The liquid splashed onto her clothes, making her wince as she felt the warmth through the fabric. Hearing Hu Qianxi's angry scolding, the girl hurriedly asked if Su Sui had been burned and offered to wash her clothes. Xu Sui held back an angry Hu Qianxi, suggesting they try the dryer first. Hu Qianxi was worried. The dryer didn't work, so borrowing a set of clothes made sense. But who could save them at this critical moment? Suddenly, someone unexpected shouted out, "I have one, it's Juye from before, but maybe the size won't fit. Want to try?" Xu Sui looked at Juye with a calm expression. "I'll take it. Meng Man might not want it since she can't get past her own barriers." So when Juye heard that Xu Sui actually agreed, he was equally surprised. But this time, he didn't play tricks, turning to call Xu Sui over for a change of clothes. He's truly the one who knows Zhou Jinze. Juye has good taste. His white long dress looks much better than Xu Sui's. Xu Sui accepted the clothes and thanked him, but his actions left Juye flustered, making it hard for him to find a chance to be annoying. He could only pout and look away in defeat. Even if he's washed, Juye still looks pretty. Seeing Xu Sui come out of the dressing room, not lacking an eye-catching appeal. "Wow, Master Su, you look so beautiful, but it's a bit big." He needed clips or pins. Coincidentally, Shi Yue seemed to sense this and approached. Noticing Xu Sui's awkward expression, he asked what was wrong. Xu Sui stammered, unable to speak clearly. Seeing his hand always covering his chest, Shi Yue cleared it, taking off his brooch and handing it over. Although Xu Sui needed him badly, he was still a term implying a different gender, so Shi Yue understood what he was concerned about. He just offered help as an elder brother, which made Xu Sui feel at ease to accept with gratitude. "Thank you, senior brother. I'll return it." Nearby, Wu Qianxi witnessed the entire scene. In Xu Sui's heart, Shi Yue was merely his senior brother. On the way to the competition venue, 100 Months leaned against the wall alone, casually saying hello as Xu Sui passed by. "You're quite lucky, but you can't marry him. He knows all too well the pain of chasing Zhou Jinze. But they've already reacquainted themselves recently, so he will try his best to win Zhou Jinze's heart. Thank you for lending me your clothes, but I never owe you anything." In college, he didn't recognize me anymore. The second time we met, I was his niece's roommate. The third time, he had already broken up with you. I'm not that little 3 you're talking about. So our relationship isn't something you can easily tear apart. Xu Sui on stage tonight is very beautiful. So beautiful that it makes Zhou Jinze's heart race. After practicing together for so long, I never noticed before. Turns out he smiles so happily on stage. 100 Months made Xu Sui wait a few minutes due to her tardiness. Seeing his anxious expression, Zhou Jinze comforted him gently, saying everything was fine just as the timing worked out. At this moment, the 5 of them appeared in perfect unison at the center of the stage, their faces full of smiles, determined to win this competition. However, Zhou Jinze, who was the focus of the band, chose to stand behind, facing the enthusiastic cheers from the audience. Zhou Jinze ignored everyone else and whispered that Xu Sui looked very beautiful. Xu Sui was momentarily stunned by his words. Realizing what he said, she turned around with joy, only to see Zhou Jinze smiling straight ahead. As if those words weren't spoken, bubbles of happiness bubbled in Xu Sui's heart. It didn't matter whether she admitted it or not. He had heard her anyway. Yes, even 100 Months could hear them. A minute later, everyone was ready for the narrative to begin. With Big Liu snapping his fingers, their performance officially began. Big Liu's passionate and high-pitched voice, Sheng Nanzhou's gentle and rhythmic style, and Hu Qianxi's crisp guitar notes filled the air. As they approached the song's climax, Big Liu signaled Zhou Jinze to play the cello, whose deep, elegant sound echoed throughout the venue. Xu Sui skillfully moved her drumsticks, following the rhythm of the music. At this moment, she was grateful for learning drums. Otherwise, she wouldn't have had this chance to perform with him. As the song reached its peak, it felt as if a powerful force surged through her body. 台下的观众纷纷热烈沸腾, inspiring us to forge ahead courageously in pursuit of our dreams. The audience below erupted into enthusiastic applause. That champion's trophy was naturally won by them, but Zhou Jinze kept a low profile and didn't go to claim it. Suddenly, the boy behind leered and said that there was a girl in the group who looked very lively and attractive. "Want to have Zhou Jinze introduce me to meet someone?" Originally, he thought it was Hu Qianxi saying there's no chance. Until the other party handed over their phone, Zhou Jinze only realized that the girl he was talking about is Xu Shui. Originally, this performance made Xu Shui unexpectedly go viral in Jingxing Huo. 1. Someone else revealed it was from the school next door. Zhou Jinze coldly looked at the content of the post. 1. The colors below are all Balian's breathing method after all. Soft girls play drums. Who can bear it? 1. This person even recorded Xu Shui's performance specifically. They also said that when Xu Shui smiled at the audience, 1. His legs were weak, advising you not to indulge in delusions of grandeur. Xu Shui's smile was not for you. 1. That was what he said for Zhou Jinze that sounded very beautiful, and the joy of performing together that was displayed. 1. Zhou Jinei was irresistibly drawn to Xu Shui's charm. Originally, that's how he was on stage just now. 1. The boy beside me rarely sees Zhou Jinze in such a state of trance, and he looks at him with an intrigued expression, asking curiously. 1. This obedient girl. You like her too? Zhou Jinze felt a liking for Xu Shui tonight. 1. That subconscious concern he showed, and his genuine smile can't deceive people. 1. It seems our plan is paid off, with the clouds parting to reveal the moon. Zhou Jinze didn't grasp the male student's question. 1. After watching the video to the end, I just needed his image imprinted in my heart enough. 1. Other boys dare not even touch a fraction of her. The cold winter night in the north brings a sharp chill that pierces bone. 1. Zhou Jinei left alone to meet Xu Shui at the celebration banquet, not waiting for long before Xu Shui walked out of the room. 1. The peripheral vision of Yu Guang noticed a figure resembling a stick of ointment beside him, and he was quite surprised to see that the person was Zhou Jinze. 1. Heart leaped with joy. You were waiting for me. Zhou Jinze turned his face upon hearing the voice, and saw that he was still in formal attire. A little heartache as he carefully extinguished the cigarette on the steel point, urging him to change his clothes. Zhou Jinze knew Xu Shui was very afraid of the cold. Because his body was trembling, it wasn't just that. If Zhou Jinze had gotten a bit closer, he would have noticed how passively stiff Xu Shui's skin was. But in Zhou Jinze's line of sight, Xu Shui was clutching his chest as his heartbeat sped up. It felt like he was getting warmer. Explaining that the clothes were dirty and needed to be changed, he hurriedly turned around to head back to the dormitory. How could Zhou Jinze let him go back in such a hurry? The temperature outside was even colder than inside. Running out like this wouldn't guarantee he wouldn't catch a cold. So he took off his coat and draped it over Xu Shui. Wearing that, Xu Shui felt the warmth on his body, his heart beating faster as he stood there in shock. Realizing he might have made Zhou Jinze feel cold, he tried to return the clothes, wondering who needed them more between the two of them. It was obvious from a glance. Besides, it wasn't like being cold would be a big deal for a man his age. He told Xu Shui to put on the coat, and did so reluctantly. If Ye Jie had given him the clothes instead, Xu Shui probably wouldn't have hesitated to go back. Watching Xu Shui run out quickly, Zhou Jinze smiled with affection. Truly a silly girl. With other girls, they would be eager for her to take off her clothes. Although Jinxing and Da Yi were close, the round trip of 15 minutes was still challenging. Because Xu Shui didn't want Zhou Jinze to wait too long, Zhou Jinze often walked between two campuses, naturally noticing it. Watching him put the clothes in a bag before thanking him. Such carefulness made Zhou Jinze feel uncomfortable. He called out to him, and Xu Shui thought he was being reprimanded. Zhou Jinze asked with a reproachful tone, "Do you have to be so polite with me?" This Zhou Jinze left Xu Shui at a loss for words, making him anxious and unable to speak clearly. He usually spoke logically, but why couldn't he find the right words now? Zhou Jinze laughed at Xu Shui's awkwardness, taking off his coat. "Stop joking around, let's go get a taxi up front." Tonight, Zhou Jinze's smile was radiant, contrasting with Xu Shui's shy face. But this was their way of showing affection. Watching Zhou Jinze and Yue Ruyue standing close together. Even though it wasn't the first time he saw them like that, Xu Shui felt a sharp pain in his heart. "Don't worry about Suo Bao. Zhou Jinze's heart is on you." In the quiet night, Su Sui and Zhou Jinze walked together to the gathering. Suddenly, a familiar female voice broke the serene atmosphere, which Su Sui recognized as Yue Yibai, who had helped him not long ago. Zhou Jinze naturally picked up on this too, gesturing for Su Sui to stay put while he went to check it out. He guessed what was happening inside. This move was to ensure Su Sui's safety. Inside the alley, Yue Yibai was surrounded by 3 thugs who were chatting with her in a flippant manner. Despite this, she didn't feel any fear and looked down on them. Helping you isn't enough? Their anger quickly rose at her response. They immediately raised their fists to teach her a lesson. Zhou Jinze appeared just in time, calling out Yue Yibai as his hero once again, and the one he loved. Yue Yibai was overjoyed. She couldn't wait, running towards Zhou Jinze's side and then grabbing his arm tighter. She declared to the thugs that they were together, that he was her boyfriend. Zhou Jinze instinctively tried to pull away, but found himself held even more tightly. Zhou Jinze looked at Yue Yibai thoughtfully. It seemed she hadn't given up on him yet. However, the thugs had heard Zhou Jinze's warning and ran off in fear of retribution. Su Sui witnessed this scene with his eyes, naturally hearing their conversation too. Although he knew Zhou Jinze and Yue Yibai were just acting, the sight of them standing together was so painful that it made him comfort himself. It's not the first time. Don't be sad. Nothing to worry about. Yue Yibai thought Zhou Jinze had changed his mind, but was doused with cold water when he didn't release her hand. They were friends after all. Why should he care? He hadn't expected such a final break, not even a hint of warmth, only letting go silently. At least they were once friends. Yue Yibai wasn't telling the truth but was pouting, saying Zhou Jinze didn't cherish him because he was beautiful. Zhou Jinze lowered his gaze and smiled self-deprecatingly. He didn't know his own future. How could he cherish others? But now, there was something more important for him to do, because a girl was waiting for him. Yue Yibai, however, wasn't giving up, tugging at Zhou Jinze's clothes and wanting him to stay by her side. But every 10 words from Yue Yibai only elicited a few cold responses from Zhou Jinze. His heart had already flown towards the immortal beast. He stood there, stirring his desire. The sound of Yue Yibai's voice was now just noise, annoying Zhou Jinze. I need to go. Someone is waiting for me. Zhou Jinze couldn't see Su Sui's excellence, so when he saw a boy by Su Sui, he felt jealous. Stay away from that guy. He isn't good. Su Sui curiously asked, Then you? The night was cold, and Su Sui stood in place, waiting for Zhou Jinze to return. If it wasn't true love, he might have rushed to the gathering first. Suddenly, a pair of shoes appeared before him, startling Su Sui and making his steps stumble. The person in front opened his arms to support Su Sui, but said jokingly, Classmate, you don't have to be so formal with me. Su Sui stood still and immediately kept a distance while apologizing. At the moment he saw Su Sui, the man was overjoyed. Wasn't that sweet girl who used to play drums? Blushing, he asked for his contact information in a loud voice. First, he introduced himself, praising Su Sui's performance very much, then using Zhou Jinze and Sheng Nanzhou's names to get closer to Su Sui. Even shamelessly calling her a junior, finally pulling out his phone to show the WeChat QR code, inviting Su Sui to contact him in case of any issues. His series of attacks left Su Sui speechless, but he didn't want to add a stranger's number casually. Just then, someone called his name, and Su Sui turned around in surprise. It was Zhou Jinze returning. Seeing no action from him, the man urged coldly, Indeed, those favored are different. I haven't been treated this well for over a year. Ever since Zhou Jinze appeared, Su Sui's gaze couldn't leave his figure, automatically moving closer to him. The boy tried to hold back, but how could Zhou Jinze give him such an opportunity? Blocking Su Sui and asking, Is there something? The boy immediately smiled, putting his arm around Zhou Jinze's back, not daring to mention the WeChat matter, only saying he was also going to the celebration dinner and wanted to walk together. Who wants to walk with you? Sitting down but not recognizing it, what right do you have to be on the same path? After Zhou Jinze removed the boy's hand from his position, he said, Go ahead and get a taxi in front. Then, nonchalantly taking out Guohe candies, Putting one in his mouth, he urged impatiently, "Hurry up! Anyone who dares to provoke Lord Zhou will make you regret it." The boy was intimidated by Zhou Jinze's presence and walked away with a lingering sense of dissatisfaction. Zhou Jinze treated him like a child, casually commenting that he was foolish. But Su Sui heard the voice but not the content, turning to ask. Zhou Jinze had completely lost his earlier arrogance, feeling guilty. "Nothing. Do you want some candy?" Since that time at the convenience store, Su Sui fell in love with Guohe candies and reached out for 2 more. During Su Sui's candy-eating period, Zhou Jinze personally warned him, "Stay away from that guy, he's not a good person." As he heard his sudden concern, Su Sui felt a warmth in his heart and instinctively looked at him with expectant eyes. "What about you?" Usually so calm and composed, Zhou Jinze was feeling anxious at this moment. His gaze is too clear and beautiful. It makes him dare not touch any of it. Of course, I'm no saint either. Before Su Sui could be born, he didn't want to bring up the topic again, urging them to hurry along to the gathering. Suddenly remembering what that boy said earlier, "There's something I forgot to tell you about your girl. She's very outstanding and deserves a compliment for tonight's performance." Today is Zhou Jinze's turn to be jealous. Silently walking back to Su Sui's side, he saw a boy talking to Su Sui with a red face. He had been standing behind Su Sui, wanting to see what he was up to, until the boy scratched his head and shyly showed his phone, saying, "Sis, we should add contact information." Su Sui's expression turned awkward as he tried to find an excuse to refuse. But Zhou Jinze's jealousy flared like a vinegar bomb. "All right then, you've come to steal my girl too?" Instantly emitting frigid winds akin to Siberia, "I'll freeze your ass into an ice stick if you dare take her from me." The boy was blown back and sneezed violently, dropping his phone in the process. Hearing the sound of it hitting the ground, his heart shattered as he bent down to pick up his phone, sobbing. "Ouch! This is my brand new model. Where did this cold wind come from?" Zhou Jinze quickly stepped in front of Su Sui and snorted coldly, but his smile only shifted rather than disappeared. Compared to the boy's painful expression, Zhou Jinze was gleeful at seeing him suffer. "You tried to steal my girl? See if you dare do it again next time." The pain of unrequited love is well known. Even though Su Sui and Zhou Jinze have gotten closer recently, he still gets nervous, and his heart races around Zhou Jinze. Seeing other girls chat with him makes his heart ache with a sense of loss. Zheng Nan knows this feeling all too well. At that moment, he was alone in the room drinking silently when Su Sui asked where Hu Qianxi was. His eyes glinted with jealousy, as if an unknown wild man had spirited away his beloved. Where did that wild man take her? Su Sui tilted his head in confusion. "Wild man, here he comes." Huan Qianxi's face lit up with excitement as she asked Su Sui for some iced water. It's not good to drink ice-cold water in winter, so she poured him a cup of warm water instead, which he gulped down eagerly, feeling like his energy was restored. Then, he couldn't wait to share with Su Sui about meeting a boy who made his heart race. He talked excitedly about their encounter, the disappointment when his advances were rejected, and his anxiety over pursuing him, ending with a wicked laugh at knowing his name. He won't be able to escape now. Su Sui heard it and felt terrified. Suddenly, he understood the meaning of what Sheng Nanzhou had just said, which was completely opposite to Hu Qianxi's excitement. Sheng Nanzhou seemed quite depressed. At this moment, Su Sui seemed to know that he liked Hu Qianxi, but Sheng Nanzhou didn't show any interest in it. So Su Sui didn't ask more questions. Suddenly, a boy called him and handed over a box of flying flags with a smile. Seeing no malice in his eyes, Su Sui agreed to play. However, all his thoughts were on Zhou Jinze. They were just separated by Sheng Nanzhou. He really wanted to talk to him. At this moment, he should have gathered the courage to do so. Otherwise, someone else would take advantage of the opportunity before him. Because there were other girls who also wanted to chat with Zhou Jinze, Su Sui listened to their conversation and sadly lowered his gaze. One girl deliberately raised her voice to attract Zhou Jinze's attention. She sat down next to him under the pretense of caring about him drinking less alcohol. Sheng Nanzhou answered first, saying there was no need to worry. Suddenly, he remembered a familiar accompaniment suggestion for Zhou Jinze to go sing. With this, the girls were overjoyed and encouraged him. Zhou Jinze put down his empty cup and rejected it with one sip. The boy behind him laughed sarcastically, asking if his singing was bad. However, facing their taunts, Zhou Jinze didn't care much as he commented calmly on the strawberries he had eaten. They're still sweet. Su Sui kept an eye on them but completely forgot about playing games with others. Hearing the urging sound, he nervously withdrew his gaze. Suddenly, Zhou Jinze's phone vibrated. He coldly unlocked it and looked at the content before standing up to put on clothes. He said goodbye to Sheng Nanzhou as there was a meeting, and he had to leave first. Su Sui just stared blankly at his back. His heart seemed to have followed him. This whole night, they hadn't spoken a word. When would their next meeting be? Suddenly, a hand pulled him back. Hu Qianxi anxiously shouted, "You can't go!" Zhou Jinze was puzzled. Why not? Hu Qianxi was panicking because it was Christmas Eve tonight. This reason didn't seem convincing enough, so she leaned close to his ear and whispered something. After hearing her, Zhou Jinze really changed his mind. They both exchanged mysterious glances. Watching Su Sui play games on the side, 15 minutes later, Su Sui laughed happily. "I won!" The lights dimmed as he immediately anxiously turned around to check on Zhou Jinze's condition because of his fear of darkness and enclosed spaces. Luckily, his phone was charged this time. He turned on the flashlight and softly called out, "Zhou Jinze, I'm here." Tonight, Su Sui was very happy because not only did Zhou Jinze sing a song for him, but he finally remembered his name. Hearing the room go dark, Su Sui anxiously called out Zhou Jinze's name. This concern alone made Zhou Jinze feel very warm. Moreover, Su Sui wasn't bad either. His charm on stage tonight had even caught the attention of boys from both campuses. After seeing that Zhou Jinze didn't have a panic attack, Su Sui finally let his heart settle. Suddenly, he heard a firecracker sound which startled him. At this moment, someone wished him a happy birthday. The group followed Hu Qianxi and pushed in with a strawberry cake. Hu Qianxi smiled brightly. "Happy birthday, my precious Sui Sui." The initial shock turned into double the excitement. Su Sui's eyes were filled with tears as he was moved to tears. Unable to hold back, he ran towards Hu Qianxi and hugged him tightly. With a choked voice, he thanked him profusely. Seeing his happy face, they had completed their task. Of course, blowing out the candles for birthday wishes couldn't be missing. Su Sui's wish was simple, hoping that family and friends could stay healthy and live well. He didn't mention anything about Zhou Jinze making a move on him. With this small incident, the atmosphere became even more lively. Su Sui took a sip of wine. Though it tasted slightly bitter, he wore a happy smile. "There's still one more surprise waiting for you." Suddenly, a familiar and pleasant voice came from his ear. Zhou Jinze was holding a microphone singing. Feeling Su Sui's gaze, Zhou Jinze slowly looked over. At that moment of eye contact, Su Sui's heart raced as he was surprised by the gift from Zhou Jinze. Those who said Zhou Jinze couldn't sing were now proven wrong. The 3-minute song quickly finished. Someone asked for another round, but Zhou Jinze firmly refused. Now it was time to give him a message of well wishes. As Zhou Jinze slowly walked towards Su Sui, the latter was shocked, and his heart beat faster as he approached. Stopping just half a meter away from Su Sui, Zhou Jinze looked at him with a gentle expression. "Happy birthday, Su Sui. May you live long." Back in the dormitory, Su Sui listened to the yellow door, savoring Zhou Jinze's song. This was the most unforgettable birthday for Su Sui, not only because of everyone's company, but also because he specially sang a song for me. Wishing me a happy birthday every day, his heart was filled with bubbles that made him blush. He wanted to share this joy, otherwise it would overflow in his heart. In the past 6 months, his relationship with Zhou Jinze had gradually grown closer, like he was living in a dream. Before, they were as far apart as the Milky Way, but now, through his own efforts, he finally made him see him. His proactive approach has finally borne fruit. The moment he posted it on WeChat Moments, everyone liked it, including Zhou Jinze. He wondered if Zhou Jinze had guessed that Su Sui was confessing to him. But even if he didn't, he could still consider this like a brief fantasy. It would be his response to his persistent pursuit. Su Sui's secret love got some good news because of Zhou Jinza's second bout of jealousy. The last time, when Su Sui stepped confidently on the stage at Campfire Joy, a bunch of admirers surrounded him. Their buzzing voices were so annoying that it drove him crazy. After one night, Su Sui didn't know he had become a goddess to both campuses. Liang Shuang's face lit up as she looked at Su Sui in confusion. Only after seeing the viral post did she realize what was happening. However, Su Sui wasn't happy. Instead, Liang Shuang encouraged him to talk about his love life, but he politely declined. This made Liang Shuang even more curious and asked if he had ever dated before. He wanted to, but no one noticed him, which shocked her further. At this moment, Hu Qianxi interrupted their conversation with a shocking news. "Sui Sui, I feel like my uncle likes you?" Su Sui's heart skipped a beat as he blushed in shock. But quickly regaining his composure, he realized, how could that be? Everyone knew he preferred women who were full of charm. "It doesn't matter. I have proof. Last night, when everyone asked him to sing, he ignored them all. But on your birthday, he sang for you. Something unprecedented. When it comes to this matter, he can't help but feel happy, and quickly looks away to avoid Hu Qianxi noticing his unusual behavior. However, Hu Qianxi didn't notice. She was completely immersed in the shocking discovery because her intuition rarely fails. So, she wants to give Zhou Jinza and Su Sui a chance to see if Zhou Jinza's reaction towards Su Sui is particularly special. Hearing this news, Su Sui feels both happy and worried. Happy that he can confirm his feelings, but worried what to do if he still doesn't like him. But this news is like the rain that quenches a drunkard's thirst. Even though he knows it's not real, there's still 0.01% of hope, so he tries. Maybe Zhou Jinza really does have some feelings for us. With Su Sui's permission, Hu Qianxi acts immediately and arranges their meeting on Friday evening. When Su Sui sees Zhou Jinza at the door, she is surprised. "How can it be you?" Hearing Yang Zhuang's anger, Zhou Jinza asks, "What, are we meeting for the first time? Why shouldn't I be here?" Of course not. He just wasn't prepared mentally and thought Hu Qianxi was the one who invited him. As Zhou Jinza calls someone, a bad feeling suddenly washes over him, and indeed, it comes true. Taking advantage of an upset stomach, Hu Qianxi slips away, causing Su Sui to visibly panic. Seeing Su Sui's panicked expression, Zhou Jinza feels a bit uncomfortable inside. "Don't you want to?" This question makes Su Sui even more flustered. He quickly refuses with white hands. "How can I not want to?" It's the scene he has been waiting for, but everything is too sudden. To show his apology, he decides to take him out for a meal. While ordering, Su Sui specifically asks for no scallions and coriander. Suddenly, Zhou Jinza leans in to correct it. "Try two without scallions and coriander. Thank you." Seeing that Su Sui shares the same food restrictions as him makes Zhou Jinza happy. "Don't eat coriander?" Looking at his charming smile, which has captivated Su Sui, he nods enthusiastically, firmly denying his liking for scallions and coriander. The atmosphere is just right now. Suddenly, the first butterfly of the wave flies up to Su Sui in front of Zhou Jinza. After expressing admiration, it wants to add WeChat. But Su Sui politely declines with schoolwork as an excuse. Just then, a reminder for pickup arrives. Su Sui turns away and takes the food from Zhou Jinza before leaving. Only when sitting at the table does Su Sui reveal his nervousness to Zhou Jinza. Zhou Jinza tries to divert his attention. "You're quite popular lately." Hearing this, Su Sui blushes like a girl. "Don't laugh at me." But this Su Sui makes everyone even more curious. Is that really Su Sui? "Wow, I look better in person than on video," Zhou Jinza says with a sideways glance as he hears the voice. Suddenly feeling down, he smiles and continues joking with Su Sui. "Do you have to queue now to chase me?" If only he could discover his feelings at this moment. Perhaps they wouldn't have had to be apart for so long later on. Su Sui Bai was elated for a moment. He originally thought Zhou Jinza wanted to pursue him, making Su Sui Bai's whole face turn red with embarrassment and stand there dumbfounded. But what he didn't expect was that this was just another prank from Zhou Jinza, saying only that his popularity at school was good. This made the heart that had soared for Xu Suibai plummet instantly. He thought his long-term crush might finally bear fruit, but it turned out to be just a distant wish. Back in the dormitory, Su Suibai had already hidden his pain deep within. Hu Qianxi approached with excitement and asked about their progress. They only shared a simple meal together. My uncle treats me like a friend. Hu Qianxi was quite puzzled by this result. His intuition is usually very accurate, but Su Suibai couldn't possibly lie. So where did the problem lie? But that's not urgent. We can put it aside for now, since they are the only two in the dormitory right now. He wants to verify another hunch. Do you like Zhou Jinze? Su Suibai's heart skipped a beat, and his face showed surprise. How do you know? The look of love is hard to hide. His attitude towards Zhou Jinze was vastly different. He seemed obedient on the outside, but cold at his core. Facing Zhou Jinze made him easily blush. It turns out his feelings were never hidden. They were so effortlessly revealed. But he felt relieved instead. Hixi was one of his few good friends, and now that someone could listen to him, he didn't have to bear the crush alone anymore. He admitted his feelings right away. Don't say anything about it. Hu Qianxi is very reliable. She made a sealing gesture towards Su Suibai. At this moment, Liang Shuang returned from the canteen and looked puzzled at their actions. It seemed like they hadn't been overheard. So Su Suibai nervously changed the subject, asking what good things he brought back. Of course, it was chives-filled dumplings. Seeing that, Su Suibai's eyes lit up with excitement. But Hu Qianxi looked terrified. Although his crush had been discovered, the situation wasn't much affected. They needed to prepare for their final exams. Hu Qianxi invited Su Suibai to a cat cafe to study. When leaving, 1017 suddenly pouted at Su Suibai, only calming down after being carried out. He obediently lay next to Su Suibai like a well-trained pet. From the ancient beast Lin Shun to now becoming a ball of fluff, his life was comfortable. After 3 hours, Su Suibai finished studying and prepared to go eat. But when he looked down, 1017 had disappeared from beside him. Hu Qianxi noticed Su Suibai's anxiety and told him not to worry, suggesting they search the cafe separately. The two walked in front and back, calling out 1017's name. Su Suibai even bent down to look for his figure. Suddenly, a meow made Su Suibai jump. He was lying on a male student's lap, looking so comfortable. So he arched his back and whispered, "Come here, 1017." The man was none other than Zhou Jinze. When he heard the voice, he turned to look at Su Suibai. Their eyes met without any awkwardness. Zhou Jinze guessed Su Suibai's intention and asked, "Your cat?" Su Suibai only stood there, stunned, as he answered yes. Zhou Jinze looked thoughtfully at Su Suibai, scratching 1017's chin, making him purr contentedly. Cats are proud animals. They won't develop a dependency unless it's with someone familiar. So the truth was clear. 1017 wasn't a stray cat. Zhou Jinze was his original owner. Zhou Jinze liked teasing Su Suibai. He could have easily said that this was the cat he lost 3 months ago, but Shen Nanzhou couldn't stand seeing Su Suibai's awkwardness and stepped in to explain. Su Suibai stared at him with confused eyes, recalling their meals together, where they had mentioned Zhou Jinze losing a school cat. The realization hit him hard, making his heart race. He realized he had picked up the cat that Zhou Jinze lost 3 months ago. This made him feel uneasy again. At this moment, Hu Qianxi came to help. With a mischievous grin, "Oh, don't argue. It was their cat, right?" Zhou Jinze didn't refute, causing Su Suibai's face to turn red with embarrassment and happiness. Behind them, Su Suibai and Hu Qianxi sat down, discussing why they came to the cafe because the library was too noisy. They thought a coffee shop would be better, but found it just as noisy. Zhou Jinze's popularity attracted many girls who tried to chat with him. Unlike Shen Nanzhou's jealousy, Zhou Jinze took it in stride and was surprised by 1017's change. He smiled at Su Suibai, praising him for taking good care of the cat, noting how fat he had become. Hearing his praise, Su Suibai felt anxious about 1017 being taken away. Zhou Jinze noticed his worry, and his joy was momentarily dampened. However, he only felt a sense of relief. In 3 months, he could make him into a ball, showing that Su Suibai genuinely cared for him. So Zhou Jinze didn't force the issue. Relax, you decide. His words made Su Suibai feel grateful and relieved. But with winter break coming up soon, it would be inconvenient to bring 1017 home. He asked Zhou Jinze to take care of 1017 while he was away. Just as Zhou Jinze was about to respond, a beautiful girl approached them with the excuse of wanting to keep a cat at home. Su Suibai felt a sharp pain and tried to hide his discomfort, but Zhou Jinze saw through it. He refused without even looking. My cat is more likely to bite. Hearing this, Su Suibai was shocked again. Only after the girl left did he feel relieved. On the first day of break, Su Suibai arrived at Zhou Jinze's house as agreed. Kui Da, like a devoted wife, surrounded Su Suibai with excitement and enthusiasm. Zhou Jinze, seeing this, became jealous and dampened her enthusiasm with a low growl. After entering, Su Suibai brought over all of 1017's things. Zhou Jinze frowned at the cute items, feeling overwhelmed. I used to take care of him. Those things are still here. Su Suibai felt awkward but admitted his nervousness.
You've said that already. This time, Zhou Jinze didn't say much and chatted with Shu Suibai about where he lived. He learned that Shu Suibai's home was far south. Curious why he came so far for university, Zhou Jinze felt the warmth of his hand and smiled. Of course, because of you. But he didn't tell the truth. He only said he transferred schools in high school and liked snow. Zhou Jinze treated it as casual conversation, but suddenly asked about his departure time, reminding him to take care of 1017. Just before reaching the door, Zhou Jinze called out, Shu Suibai. He picked up the car keys with his fingertips, put on a jacket, and smiled as he jingled the keychain. I'll see you off, he said, just like his usual care and attentiveness. This was Shu Suibai's first time realizing how negative Zhou Jinze's mindset was. He liked dangerous sports more than anything else. While Shu Suibai worried about him, Zhou Jinze half-jokingly shrugged it off, feeling no one to care for him but himself. Even if he died on a sunlit road someday, it would be worth it. But the pain hidden beneath his smile, only he knew. Perhaps, like his mother, no one would remember him until death. Suddenly, Shu Sui's birth startled Zhou Jinze awake from his slumber. The morning sun was not much different from the setting sun, just wait a bit longer. Watching the girl's extremely serious expression, Zhou Jinze froze for a moment before slowly smiling. Yes, after enduring the night, isn't it a new day? Only then did Shu Sui feel at ease and start joking around. After all, saying such things to a prospective doctor was a big no-no. Zhou Jinze's smile on his mosquito-like face became even brighter. It took nearly an hour before they arrived at the high-speed rail station, walking down the street. The gate just heard the announcement that Shu Sui's train ticket had been clipped. He should leave now, but thinking about not seeing him for the whole winter vacation left a hollow feeling in his heart. So he took a deep breath and mustered up the courage to ask Zhou Jinze if he could see photo 1017. This way, they could chat without missing each other, and it would help better convey his feelings. Zhou Jinze agreed without much thought. Only now did Shu Sui's face brighten again as he took over the luggage from him. As he was leaving, he couldn't help but turn around to say goodbye. Thank you for today. Watching the girl walk away, he felt a tinge of reluctance too. Finally, just before Shu Sui clipped his ticket, Zhou Jinze called out and stopped her. Hearing his voice, Shu Sui found it hard to believe and quickly turned back. Seeing that familiar figure, Zhou Jinze was smiling as well. Little Mr. Shu, see you next year. Shu Sui was stunned by this sudden address. At that moment, everyone around them seemed blurred, their gazes colliding mid-air. If a photo had been taken then, it would have made for a very romantic couple shot. Shu Sui smiled, watching Zhou Jinze's smile grow wider and wider. Good. See you next year.
Yes, there was no need to be sad. They would meet again in the spring. In the evening, Xu Sui returned to Li Yingzheng's home. As soon as the door opened, she rushed into her grandmother's arms. The old lady had cleaned up nicely, and her scent made Xu Sui feel at ease. She subconsciously rubbed against her. "Grandma, you smell so good. I'll sleep with you tonight." Grandma was naturally overjoyed. It was rare for the granddaughter to come back home. Even if she wanted stars from heaven, she would have to pluck them down. Soon, Grandma noticed that Xu Sui seemed thinner. Xu Sui felt guilty and tried to blame her grandmother's eyesight. She then switched topics by mentioning their mother. "Speaking of Cao Cao, Mom is back from the market late because she bought vegetables." Xu Sui immediately took over her mother's things, but she wanted to take Xu Sui with her to see Grandma. It was cold outside. How could they let Mom work alone in the kitchen while she waited for dinner? During cooking, their grandmother's care was different from their mother's concern about Xu Sui's academic performance. She had never disappointed her mother, and proudly mentioned winning 2 awards. This made her even more proud of her daughter's obedience. However, the price of this obedience was everything Xu Sui gave up. Just to cater to her interests, even Xu Sui's friendships were interfered with. Hearing her mother ask about these bad guys, Xu Sui's heart skipped a beat for the first time. She had lied as a good girl for so long. She just wanted to live once for herself, and not let her mother know about Zhou Jinze. A few days later, while tending to the potted plants on the balcony, Zhou Jinze sent an unwelcome message. Photo 1017 had scratched himself due to an allergic reaction. This made Xu Sui's heart race. She sent a string of worried messages to Zhou Jinze, forgetting that she had already returned home and wanted to visit him directly. Zhou Jinze replied calmly with, "Don't worry," instantly calming her anxious heart. He then shared his location, revealing he was taking 1017 to the hospital. To make her more at ease, every step of the way, he reported back to Xu Sui, including the doctor's treatment process for 1017. Sitting quietly on the balcony as she read Zhou Jinze's messages, it felt like she was there with him, watching over 1017. In the end, it wasn't a big deal. Just 3 days of continuous medication would be fine. Only then did she finally put her heart at ease. She never thought that something she said casually could come true. But fortunately, she was there to make things so meticulous, like being reliable and considerate when they were young. Realizing it was already 1:30 p.m., time for lunch, she wanted to order takeout for her but felt too obvious. In the end, she just sent a text urging him gently. Xu Sui could be braver. This would have been such a good opportunity to deepen their relationship. Unfortunately, 1017's chance was wasted. So Zhou Jinze only replied coldly. For the next 3 days, Zhou Jinze seemed very busy and didn't reply any messages. Xu Sui was worried about 1017's condition, which made her lose interest in reading. She stared at her phone blankly, waiting for a response that never came. Suddenly, she was startled by the video call from Zhou Jinze. Picking up the phone, her heart pounded as this would be their first video chat. Taking a deep breath to calm herself before answering. But what greeted her was a shock. The other side showed Zhou Jinze's bare chest muscles, making Xu Sui's repressed emotions surge again. Her heartbeat was even faster than before, and her face turned as red as a ripe apple. After their phone call, Xu Sui felt embarrassed. She had always thought of someone in her heart. Seeing Zhou Jinze's chest, she blushed and held up the phone high. Suddenly, under the light, she noticed something yellow. The entire screen was occupied by 1017, who meowed cutely. Adjusting her view, she saw that Zhou Jinze had already closed his eyes and fallen asleep in bed. "Look, I'm going to sleep." Her heart raced as she looked at this foolie, then calmed down and whispered a response. She first zoomed in on 1017's image, who was yawning leisurely. Xuanzhe's heart finally eased up. It was great. The little guy seemed to be recovering well. But his fingers moved uncontrollably and slid over the portrait of the person she had always kept in her heart. This was the first time Xu Sui saw Zhou Jinze asleep, with less sharpness than usual, looking more approachable. She couldn't help but zoom in on his face repeatedly, vowing to remember him well, so that when she can no longer see him, She could recall these memories to ease her longing. Gently stroking the screen where his lips were, she felt deeply happy and satisfied, because only then did Zhou Jinze dare to try. The affection he had for her made her bolder in looking at him. Suddenly, Zhou Jinze's mouth moved slightly. "Minan, I miss you too." These words felt like a sharp blade piercing Shu Sui's heart. She hastily ended the call and stared at the black screen, feeling inexplicably sour and stifled. Who had said those words? Did she have someone she missed? Although she knew she shouldn't overthink it, the fact that he was someone she dreamed of meant a lot to her. But she was also afraid of knowing this answer. If it were true, compared to Shu Sui's sadness, Zhou Jinze had an unusually good sleep last night. 1017 woke up to his voice and pounced on him, meowing obediently. Zhou Jinze yawned contentedly and scratched her chin, revealing a rare smile. With her by his side, he surprisingly had a pleasant dream for the first time after drinking. It was about his mother returning home, and then Shu Sui appeared as if she sent him a video call. Picking up the phone from its stand, he unlocked it to see the long 30-minute conversation that confirmed how he felt. Her suspicions were confirmed, and for the first time, she felt panicky because she had lost her train of thought. The more she tried to remember, the more frustrated she became, covering her face in regret. What if she said something foolish? She quickly sent a message to Shu Sui asking about it. Shu Sui stayed awake all night trying to suppress her sorrow, but when she received his message, her emotions flooded back. Reading his question, Shu Sui's heart ached terribly. She wanted to reply and ask who he was thinking of. Was it a girl? The inner turmoil made her grip the phone tightly. If this were true, could she bear the consequences? Just then, her mother called for dinner. Shu Sui turned off the screen and walked away, excusing herself as a coward because she couldn't handle the consequences. It was time to update the confession post. Zhou Jinze lay on his bed staring at his phone in frustration, while 1017 played with a ball of yarn nearby. Still no message from Shu Sui after waiting for some time. Zhou Jinze's heart raced, fearing he might have said something inappropriate. He frantically asked 1017 to find out what was going on, making her feel even more agitated. "Should I check what you're doing? What kind of skill does a cat have?" So, 1017 ignored him and continued playing with the ball of yarn. Zhou Jinze sighed and lay back on his bed. Was he too nervous? Talking to a cat about this made 1017 secretly smile. Foolish humans. Shu Sui was also disturbed by Zhou Jinze, unable to focus on her studies. The knowledge in the book turned into Zhou Jinze's chest muscles, making her blush and quickly close the book. How could she concentrate now? She would never dare video chat with him again. The most painful kind of infatuation isn't when it has no result. It's when there's someone in your heart who treats you with mixed feelings, giving you hope only to disappoint you. Time passed quickly as Shu Sui welcomed the new year at her hometown. With the clock striking midnight, friends sent their New Year greetings on the other end of the phone. After sending back the messages, her fingers moved uncontrollably to open Zhou Jinze's chat window. Their conversation still revolved around that question after so many days. Recalling those words still hurt, but from the moment she opened the chat, she chose to suppress the bitterness and surrender to Zhou Jinze. Her carefulness about this relationship made even "Happy New Year" feel forced. She copied a generic message for her friends but added her own private thoughts. "Happy New Year, hoping you see the sunset thief every day." After saying it, she received Zhou Jinze's reply. "Shu Sui, your first time going online so simply." Facing his teasing, Shu Sui didn't back down. "I call that rhetoric," and sent a cute emoji pack. Only on her phone could she let loose her true self. Her playful nature made Zhou Jinze smile, but it was fleeting. She wasn't with Sheng Nanzhou or in her empty villa. Instead, she came to visit her grandfather for the new year. After dinner, looking at the silent and dim sky outside, it mirrored her cold heart. Even though tonight was a joyous day, it felt no different from any other night to her. She wanted to change, to experience the feeling of the new year. So she impulsively sent a message to Shu Sui, suddenly wanting to watch fireworks. But this place is so quiet. She had promised not to video chat with Zhou Jinze again. But at this moment, Su Sui put aside the decision she had made to sit down. When Zhou Jinze opened the video that Su Sui sent over, a girl was shivering in the cold wind, but her face was radiantly happy. Accompanied by the sound of fireworks, she said, "Happy New Year," and then turned the camera towards the sky filled with fireworks and stars. "Look, we're setting off fireworks here." But her gaze is fixed on the girl's eyes. The fireworks in the sky turn into shooting stars, trailing long tails that disappear into her glass-like eyes. Zhou Jinze's eyes dimmed slightly as he slowly stood up straight, then smiled again and said softly, "It was worth it." But such a warm moment didn't last for long. Su Sui accidentally dropped her phone in the toilet, and it was broken beyond repair. She felt a sense of relief that she could use this opportunity to review what she had learned. However, Zhou Jinze's words about his plans always lingered like soft thorns in her heart. "If you have someone you like, why are you so nice to me? Unconsciously giving me warm milk, the person who rarely speaks, sang for me on my birthday, personally took me to the high-speed train station, and even cared about my cat with great thoughtfulness. Or were you just being kind to every girl?" The doubts that had plagued her for days made Su Sui pick up her grandmother's phone to edit a message. "If this is true, I'd rather like you from afar, giving me hope only to dash it. Can't you be nice to me?" Zhou Jinze's tone was softer than she had ever heard before. Wasn't she the one who was nicer? Su Sui's heart echoed her thoughts. Had she always known about her feelings? She lowered her eyes and continued editing. But when Zhou Jinze sent a message asking what she meant, it felt like her world was collapsing. Her mind went blank with confusion as she replied, "What are you talking about? I don't have any time difference." Su Sui now deeply understood the pain of loving Zhou Jinze. She had thought that after spending some time together, he should have developed feelings for her, but in reality, it was all just her own delusion. Yet she still clung to a tiny hope that this was just an illusion. That hope was cruelly shattered by Zhou Jinze's cold and impatient reply. The anger and indifference in his words cut deep into Su Sui's heart. She had used an unknown number to send him a message, thinking it was Su Sui, so she kept using a gentle tone. At this moment, Su Sui felt like her entire world turned black. The harsh truth that she didn't want to face finally tore through her defenses. "Before, she treated me with courtesy because of politeness. You were just someone who barely made the cut in my list of acquaintances." She disliked him factually. This text message error made Su Sui feel foolish. Her eyes stared at the screen until they became sore, and a few tears fell, blurring her vision. It wasn't her fault, but she still sent an apology. "Sorry." Her emotional resilience crumbled in that moment, like a self-defense mechanism against further hurt. After sending the message, Su Sui blocked Zhou Jinze's phone number. After the Lantern Festival and the start of a new semester, to keep herself from thinking about Zhou Jinze, she filled her days with classes, moving between her dormitory, classroom, and library. She also delayed buying a new phone, saying she would use only her laptop for QQ. Hu Qianxi tried to invite her out to eat, but was instinctively rejected when she heard Zhou Jinze's name. Hu Qianxi sensed something amiss. Su Sui's reactions were different from usual. Perhaps it was because her uncle had been bullying her, but Su Sui brushed off the idea. Despite not neglecting her studies and even improving her grades, she used her busy schedule as an excuse to cover up her odd behavior. However, Hu Qianxi brought up Zhou Jinze again, reminding her of his presence on campus. By mid-March, Su Sui had missed all their activities. She tried to keep him out of her thoughts by hiding in a corner of her heart. But fate played another cruel joke. One day, she suddenly craved some instant noodles. As she was paying, someone called, "Bro Jinze," nearby. Su Sui instinctively looked towards the voice, and Zhou Jinze stood not far away. She saw him immediately, as did Sheng Nanzhou, who nudged her shoulder. Zhou Jinze ignored her completely, lighting a cigarette and inhaling deeply before walking past her without looking back. Her life remained unchanged without her. She was still radiant. The wind blew away the tears in her eyes. Lovers travel far to meet you, but you pass by countless times. You are the scenery I never had. Knowing Zhou Jinze's heartlessness towards love, Su Sui still craved that little warmth he gave her. She thought he liked her, but reality was harsh. After not seeing him for over a month, she treated him like a stranger. When Su Sui was at the orphanage, giving psychological counseling to children with illnesses, she saw a girl drawing a castle without a door. The girl turned when she heard Su Sui's voice, her face darkening as if recalling something painful. Because the bad guy closed the door. Su Si froze, though she didn't know what had happened to the child. She decided to help by drawing a door. If the bad guy can close the door, we can create our own. Suddenly, Su Sui understood. She was trapped in her own pain over her father's situation. Back then, she silently cried for him, but no one helped. Now someone had called out to her, offering a drink. It was Shi Yuejie, who had been absent from the scene. She came specifically to find Su Si, despite being assigned to another station. Su Sui didn't think anything of it, treating her as just an organizer for this event. But she wondered why someone so busy would come here. Wasn't she supposed to be swamped with work? It was because of her excellence that she had time to come here. She wanted to make a good impression on Su Si. Su Sui was startled and could hear the meaning in Shi Yuejie's words. She quickly wiped away any water. Su Sui wouldn't panic, but did it scare you? Yes, it did. But she didn't want to reject her outright. Just as Shi Yuejie assured her not to worry, Su Si's expression froze. She was staring at something in front of her. Shi Yuejie noticed and realized the person was Zhou Jinze. He looked exactly the same, showing no signs of missing her. This time she didn't linger on him for long, but there was a hint of panic. Shi Yuejie stepped forward to block his view. Why did you stop? Su Si heard her voice and felt old wounds reopening. She reminded herself not to look at him, or their feelings would break free. She had to leave, unable to stay near him. Yet her body reacted to Zhou Jinze's breath. But what difference does it make? You don't like me. Staying here will only complicate things. Zhou Jinze saw Su Si's reaction and heard her call out. From the start of the semester, she noticed Su Si's change. She was angry, more than just angry. She had been hurt so deeply by Zhou Jinze. Since then, Su Sui had avoided him, trying to forget him. But the more she tried to escape, the harder it became. When the Sheng family offered her a job as a tutor, something she usually looked forward to, she now wanted to avoid them. She even changed her schedule to Friday so she could minimize their weekend meetings. The innocent Sheng family didn't notice and invited her for dinner. Su Sui said she was on a diet. But today is my birthday. This sudden invitation made her feel guilty. Her aunt tried to persuade her, making it seem like Zhou Jinze had sent them as helpers. In the end, Su Si changed her mind and stayed. Come down more often. I invited many friends, including my brother Jinze. The mention of him made her heart skip a beat. At the dinner table, Sheng family members held hands with Su Sui to sit at the table. Zhou Jinze sat next to her in silence, noticing her unease. Her discomfort confirmed that she had done something wrong and was unhappy about it. Aunt Sheng stood up, raising a drink as she gave a toast. As they clinked glasses, everyone offered their well wishes. The rich food on the table caught Su Sui's eye, especially the spicy mapo tofu. But Sheng Yanjia, the mischievous one, started playing a spin game, leaving Su Sui with no choice but to watch helplessly. Suddenly, a large hand forcefully pressed down on the spinning wheel, making Sheng Yanjia very displeased. Brother Jinze, what are you doing? Jinze Zhou warned her with his eyes while moving the food towards Su Sui's side and picking up some for her. It was impossible. Sheng Yanjia understood Jinze Zhou's temper and immediately stopped any further nonsense. Everything happened silently, leaving Su Sui unaware. While Jinze Zhou pretended to pick up food, she got to eat that spicy dish as well. However, she underestimated the spiciness of the dish. A moment's distraction caused her to choke, coughing violently. Jinze Zhou promptly offered her some water again. Su Sui stared at him blankly before suddenly realizing something. Could it be that he pressed down on the spinning wheel just for me? So, Su Sui did not reject his kindness and took the cup of water, drinking from it as if a warm sensation flowed into her heart. However, This small incident failed to bridge the gap between them or make up for the hurt she had caused. After finishing dinner, Shu Sui still wanted to leave. Jinza Zhou noticed her intentions and followed her upstairs when she went to get her bag. Turning around, Shu Sui bumped into someone and was stunned as she looked back at Jinza Zhou's usually composed gaze, which now showed a hint of unease. But Shu Sui did not dare to look at him for too long, wanting only to escape. How could Jinza Zhou let her leave so easily? Feeling wronged and hurt, she wondered why he was stirring up trouble when she had already given up. Jinza Zhou did not realize that this act of hers once again caused Shu Sui pain. She thought it would be enough for them to talk, but it was too late. She never realized how her tears made him feel so helpless. She believed that Shu Sui's discomfort was a small matter and that blocking her path would solve the problem. But seeing her run away, Jinza Zhou grabbed her hand, losing patience and getting angry. "I don't want you to leave. You can go now." Feeling her oppression, tears welled up in Shu Sui's eyes. Jinza Zhou grew anxious, realizing how rude he had been. Shu Sui took the opportunity to shake his hand off, finally escaping from him. Watching the girl's figure, Jinza Zhou felt so helpless for the first time. His apology came too late. During training the next day, Sheng Nanzhou noticed her unusual behavior. Not knowing what to do, Jinza Zhou subconsciously poured out his guilt. "If you did something wrong, how should you apologize?" But Sheng Nanzhou continued to perform well, unable to help much. It was like she was putting on a show for him while trying to catch Huan Qingxi's heart. How could he expect her to do anything now? This mistake had to be fixed by himself. Since their separation, Shu Sui still concealed her pain well. Suddenly feeling cool and excited as she opened the door, "Hey, I have something to tell you." Jinza Zhou was actually downstairs. Stepping inside, several girls immediately asked for her WeChat. Huan Qingxi's reaction was calm. She had seen it before. Cool guessed that he might be interested in one of the girls or come to find her. Saying this, Huan Qingxi figured out what was happening and looked at Shu Sui worriedly. She knew how uncomfortable Jinza Zhou would feel about his feelings for her. She joked that maybe he just needed something to do, but telling the truth would make Shu Sui sad again. Hearing that Jinza Zhou made such a fuss without success, she called Huan Qingxi for help. When she heard that Uncle was looking for Shu Sui, she was glad. Shu Sui remained unresponsive until Huan Qingxi said Jinza Zhou had come to find her. Her expression changed slightly, and Cool's excitement grew. "Susu, I swear, did Jinza Zhou like you?" He might have dreamed of it before, but after that incident he was clear about his feelings. Finding him should be for that reason only. What else could they talk about? Saying more wouldn't change the fact that he didn't like her. So Shu Sui remained firm in her thoughts. "I don't want to go." Huan Qingxi had to act as a messenger again, saying, "If you don't come down, he would wait for you." Shu Sui felt a slight tremor. The brilliant youth had lowered his stance just to talk with him. Unable to resist, she secretly looked down from the balcony. Jinza Zhou was holding up his phone, looking up at her. She could see the apology in his eyes, but such behavior was really shameless. Shu Sui had no choice but to agree, knowing that they needed to get this over quickly before it got worse. He saw his resolve and reluctantly agreed. At least he could send him away now while things hadn't blown up too much. Behind them, the two girls exchanged gossiping looks. By the time they reached downstairs, Jinza Zhou was surrounded by several junior students. They watched Shu Sui approach with envy and curiosity in their eyes. Shu Sui felt uncomfortable under their gazes but did not react. But Jinza Zhou acted as if it were normal. He didn't flinch. So, Shu Sui pulled his sleeve to escape this awkward situation. Seeing the girl's discomfort, Jinza Zhou couldn't help smiling. He didn't protest her actions and even enjoyed walking slower with her. As people around them thinned out, Jinza Zhou's smile grew deeper. Even his voice took on a playful tone. "Far enough?" he asked, glancing at his sleeve where she still held him. Only then did Shu Sui realize that she was still holding onto his clothes and quickly let go. Not wanting to think too much about why Jinza Zhou wanted to talk with her, she kept herself busy. "What do you want from me?" The joy from earlier vanished. She felt a bit uncomfortable. Couldn't he just leave her alone? Seeing Xu Sui's silence, Jinzei Zhou grew heavy-hearted and apologized for his mistake. I called and texted you about this. During the New Year, I told you it was because my phone broke down and I hadn't bought a new one yet. The sadness and Wei Chu in Xu Sui's eyes showed how much his words had hurt her. Jinzei Zhou didn't dare say anything more, nor did Xu Sui want to stay longer. She stepped back, saying there wasn't anything. She was leaving. Jinzei Zhou didn't try to stop her, but said, "Go home and check your messages." Xu Sui hesitated before quickly escaping. After talking with Jinzei Zhou, Xu Sui's thoughts kept circling around his intentions. Suddenly, Huan Qingxi handed her a phone. "Look, Jinzei Zhou's call." It seemed that neither of them was in the mood to be happy. Jinzei Zhou feared Xu Sui wouldn't forgive him. Today was the New Year special episode. On New Year's Eve, fireworks were brilliant. After work, Xu Sui said goodbye to her colleagues and asked, "Dr. Xu, are you going back home for the holidays this year?" "Yes, I'll be leaving soon." Regular visitors knew how hard it was to get tickets during festivals. Suddenly, a car stopped in front of them. It was Jinzei Zhou. He called out, "Yi Yi, oh, someone's picking me up." Xu Sui accepted the teasing gracefully and smiled. "Goodbye for now. Happy New Year. See you next year." Arriving at his in-laws' place, no matter how well he's doing outside, he still needs to behave properly, like a little student. Seeing Zhou Jinzei looking nervous and uneasy, Xu Sui wondered if everything was all right. At this moment, Mrs. Xu handed him a red envelope. Xu Sui took it with both hands, puzzled as to why she was giving him one instead of receiving one from them. This year, she had given them red envelopes when they started working. Still, because the son-in-law came this year, Mrs. Xu also gave Zhou Jinze one. Zhou Jinze hesitated over the envelope in front of him before Xu Sui intervened. "Just take it. May your new year bring you new wishes and a happy life with your loved ones." Zhou Jinze felt his mother-in-law's blessings like a heavy burden. Even if he didn't say anything, he would do so anyway. Being able to marry such a good wife, he promised himself to cherish her. Wishing everyone good health in the coming year. No matter what happens, Zhou Jinze found himself acting like an ass. Even though the text message mix-up was his fault, he took out his anger on Xu Sui. Seeing the girl's hurt expression, a sense of guilt he had never felt before filled him. He needed to find a way to win her back. That night, after their separation, Zhou Jinze couldn't wait to call Wu Qixi. Xu Sui looked at her phone with frustration, but ultimately didn't have the heart to answer it. The cool spring night was still a bit chilly, but there was a hint of warmth in the air. Zhou Jinze heard Xu Sui's voice. He was nervous. "It's me," Xu Sui replied nervously. This made the tense atmosphere ease up slightly. Without answering, Xu Sui left him to explain his intentions. He wanted to use basketball tickets as an excuse to ask Xu Sui out again and apologize. Xu Sui didn't know his true intention, but was confused about why he would send her tickets. She suddenly remembered that Wu Jianxi had been pursuing Wen Luobai, who was coming to Beijing for volunteer work, and had told Xu Sui she would go with him. Immediately, she denied it. "That's not me. I didn't want to come. It's Qixi. Just think of this as wanting you here." Hearing her explanation left her in shock. She had been secretly admiring Zhou Jinze for so many years and never seen him act so humbly. Everything was just to reconcile with him, making it impossible for her to refuse. On a Sunday afternoon, Xu Sui arrived at the agreed location as scheduled, but didn't see Zhou Jinze. Not long after she sat down, a cute little girl suddenly appeared. She had her hands behind her back and confirmed Xu Sui's identity before handing her a cabbage doll. "A brother told me to give this to you," she said. Xu Sui took the doll from the girl, feeling overwhelmed with emotion. The girl wanted to ask something but forgot it. Holding the doll tightly, Xu Sui was moved by the memory of the day she casually mentioned it. She had thought about buying a new one when her father gave her this one as a gift, but her mother promised to buy it for her if she made it to the top 3 in her grade. When she returned with an award, her mother broke that promise and instead bought her a learning machine. Although the gift was more expensive than the doll, she felt disappointed and had to put on a happy face. Time passed, and now that she could afford it again, she didn't want to buy another one. Holding the doll like a treasure, Su Sui recalled how Zhou Jinze made her heart race when they first met in high school. She was always so thoughtful and sent this reminder of their past together. Suddenly, Zhou Jinze's voice echoed from afar, waking her up. "Can you forgive that jerk?" she asked, wondering if the others would agree to forgive her. After more than 2 months of misunderstanding, Su Sui and Zhou Jinze finally resolved their differences. Zhou Jinze admitted that his emotional outburst was due to a mix-up with his foreign friends. However, this wasn't what Su Sui wanted to hear. Xiaonin clearly identified as female, but Zhou Jinze didn't notice her feelings, lost in his own fear. On that day, he panicked and feared that she would discover the dark secret hidden deep within him, something he couldn't bring himself to reveal yet. "I'm sorry," she said. "I was just being silly." Everyone has their secrets. After listening to her explanation, Su Sui's repressed emotions slowly dissipated. Seeing her genuine remorse, she completely forgave her. "So that's it? If you don't hate me and he isn't the one you like, then I still have a chance," she said excitedly, holding up the doll to hide her smile. "Then everything is fine. Just stop being so stern with me." Seeing the girl's smile, Zhou Jinze finally put his worries at ease, promising solemnly that he wouldn't. With the misunderstanding resolved, Su Sui was in high spirits and bought a phone she had been wanting for some time. In her message, Zhou Jinze revealed that he had been actively trying to contact her during this period. She saw his apology on WeChat, too. The line, "Did you plan to ignore me?" surprised her. How could she know? She sent him a message inquiring about it. Seeing the cute expression from the girl, Zhou Jinze knew she was happy. For some reason, he felt happy too. He sent her a voice message. "After you blocked me, I changed my number and called you. Your grandma answered. Your name sounds nice." The last part of his message brought a warm breeze to Su Sui's heart. Others praised him for the feeling of joy on his face. On that Sunday afternoon, they met at Beijing Bank as scheduled, finding their seats. Wu Qixi started her search mode for Wen Luobai. Suddenly, Su Sui heard her phone ringing in her pocket. It was Zhou Jinze checking to see if she had arrived early. Su Sui was busy replying to the message and didn't notice a girl approaching her. When they bumped into each other, their phones flew out of their hands. Seeing Su Sui bend down to pick up hers, she felt guilty for not paying attention and asked, "It's nothing if it's just a fall. If there's something wrong, it must be good news." Such small matters are better left unmentioned. However, Zhou Jinze had already spotted her at that moment and was walking towards her. When Su Sui looked up, Zhou Jinze was right in front of her, bending down to look at her. "Hey!" The boy still looked so handsome, making Su Sui's heart race. "Where is Qixi?" Su Sui pointed to a side but found no one there. She smiled helplessly. It seemed she had searched for Wen Luobai in vain. She wouldn't get lost at Beijing Bank. Zhou Jinze took off his coat and handed it to her. "Hold this for me." Su Sui was surprised. Why did he give it to her instead of putting it somewhere else? What did he mean? Zhou Jinze started caring about Su Sui, trying to shield her from the surrounding Taohua, fortune. Whether there were ulterior motives depended on how much Zhou Jinze wanted to admit. Seeing Su Sui's stunned expression, Zhou Jinze teased, "Why not take a coat when I gave you so many things?" Looking at the suddenly enlarged face in front of him, Su Sui's pupils constricted. His heart skipped a beat, and his face instantly felt hot. He turned away to hide his feelings. After hearing Zhou Jinze's instructions, Su Sui nodded seriously, but he didn't notice that their actions resembled those of a couple. Some people were happy while others were worried. This girl envied the scene and said in front of Su Sui that she thought he was just an ordinary-looking person. Zhou Jinze had only ever liked fierce, beautiful women with a wild aura. This one seemed so indifferent. Was it possible? Just how much joy there was before. Now there's just as much disappointment. Yes, she always likes the same type. She wants to bully our cute Sui Sui. Did Shishi Queen ask if he was ordinary? Try being as ordinary as her and see what we can do. It's Zhou Jinze's tickets. Later on, we still have to give her water. Match them so closely that they can't even talk properly. Let's see how brave you are next time. Similarly, Hu Qianxi pouted and followed Su Sui down to the basketball court to hand out water to the team. Her pleading look made it impossible for Su Sui to refuse anything. Yeah, I knew it. Suo Bao is the best. Just before the game started, Zhou Jinze caught a glimpse of the quiet Su Sui sitting in the stands. Although she wasn't as lively as Hu Qianxi, her eyes were unusually bright and full of encouragement. Her serious demeanor made him feel happy and laugh out loud. There's no need to be so nervous. Even if we lose, it doesn't matter much. After all, lose isn't in her vocabulary. With her efforts, she led the first game 32-20 with a large lead. Su Sui excitedly shared this with Hu Qianxi, but found that she had disappeared again. Suddenly, someone appeared behind her, handing over a bottle of water which startled Su Sui. Realizing it was a boy, he quickly passed the water to her. The boy's gaze lingered on Su Sui's appearance as he felt awkward. Just then, Zhou Jinze stepped in to cut his chances, asking, "Su, is my shirt still with you?" This clearly showed ownership. The boy could only stand by silently and sulk. Su Sui actually thought she was there for her shirt. Of course, Zhou Jinze couldn't leave empty-handed. He took out the contents to hide his intentions before putting the shirt back in Su Sui's hands. With a student-like girl like Su Sui, he should reward her with some candy. Yes, it felt as if time had returned to that summer when she used to pour mint candies into her hand. Back then, their relationship wasn't close enough for them to eat those sweets. Now, she could finally taste one herself. Unexpected and pleasant surprises always come around. Su Sui suddenly fainted due to stomach issues during the official game. When she woke up, she found herself in Zhou Jinze's arms. She successfully blocked a potential suitor, making Zhou Jinze very happy. "Who dares take my person? I'm better than you in looks and abilities." After the second game, Green Team indeed managed to reverse the score. Zhou Jinze listened silently as his teammates complained. Honestly, this was quite annoying and shameless. But could he be so easily bullied? Was it targeting him alone? He could collect everyone's strengths to create an unbeatable team. In the third game, Zhou Jinze no longer acted alone. He learned to coordinate with his teammates. When the ball returned to his hands, he effortlessly dunked and tied the score. The audience erupted in excitement, including Su Sui. He hoped more than anyone that Zhou Jinze would win this match. Suddenly, his body felt a sharp pain. "What's happening? My stomach hurts so much. Please let me finish watching." He was really good. Just a little bit more and he could have won. But Su Sui couldn't withstand the illness. Zhou Jinze fell unconscious from his seat, hearing the sound behind him. Seeing that figure fall made his heart tighten. Dropping the ball, this game didn't matter anymore. Ignoring the mocking voices around him, Zhou Jinze only cared about the girl who fainted in front of him. Hugging her tightly, he saw the pain on her face and grew even more worried. "Su Sui, I'm here." Without caring about the gazes from others, he lifted Su Sui up. In the infirmary, Zhou Jinze's departure left a commotion behind. He wasn't playing anymore. What kind of joke was this? I might lose money now. At that moment, Su Sui woke up due to the jolts and found herself in Zhou Jinze's arms. She felt particularly safe at that moment, her pain seeming to lessen. Looking closely, she saw a hint of fear on his face. Was it concern for her? But before she could confirm anything, Zhou Jinze ran with him, becoming the center of attention across the school. Su Sui was very uncomfortable. You let me down." At this moment, how much she wished he could be selfish and just ignore all these rumors. Our Princess Shishi cried in a corner where Lu Wenbai bullied her. All because Sheng Nanzhou wasn't supportive enough. If she had expressed herself earlier, Shishi wouldn't have been so heartbroken, leaving with such a regrettable ending. The surrounding gazes made Su Sui feel very uncomfortable. But Zhou Jinze ignored his request and held him tighter. "Su Sui, don't talk now." The serious face of Zhou Jinze startled her. Why won't he let her down? And why this worried expression? Is it the answer she's been waiting for? But undeniable, this will spread across both campuses. Meanwhile, Hu Qianxi appeared enthusiastically by Lu Wenbai's side. Her intense gaze could have cooked anyone alive, but it failed to warm his cold heart. That indifferent reaction really angered her. Lu Wenbai, I'm talking to you. Why do you follow me around? Her response gave Hu Qianxi hope again. What kind of girl do you like? The result was obvious. Another rejection. If she kept being rejected in real life, it would be better to give up early and avoid more pain from futile pursuit. Suddenly, Lu Wenbai turned to face Hu Qianxi, her gaze fixed on someone else. Following her gaze, they saw a woman with a captivating presence walking past with a boy. At that moment, she only raised an eyebrow but showed no other reaction. Watching the girl he loved interact with another man while treating him like a stranger, anyone would feel hurt. Hu Qianxi read her emotions and was worried. Are you okay? But instead of asking, she directed all her anger at Hu Qianxi. Didn't you ask me what kind of girl I like? I prefer slim girls. You weren't in my choice range from the start. Following others repeatedly is really annoying. Her sincere feelings were trampled underfoot. This made Hu Qianxi feel extremely awkward and even doubt her own appeal. For something she wanted, to dare to fight for it. Was there anything wrong with that? She was just plain? Was I fat? Sweetie, you're not fat at all. She's the one who's chubby like a pig cake. A scoundrel, ungrateful, and disrespectful of women. How can a man bully such a weak girl? Come on, let's ignore her. If Su Sui and Zhou Jinze were here, they wouldn't let anyone walk away so easily. This time she cried. Seeing her tears made Zhou Jinze feel particularly helpless. It wasn't the loss of the game that bothered him. It was more about losing something much more important to him. Hu Qianxi waited until her eyes dried up before returning to the basketball court. She found out the game had ended, and only 2 boys were cleaning up. It was a pity Zhou Jinze didn't finish the game. They would have won for sure. He wasn't concerned about the result, but asked them about Shu Sui's whereabouts. Learning that she fainted during the game, he rushed to the infirmary with worry. In his hurry, he couldn't even say a proper thank you before running all the way to the clinic door. He stopped and panted heavily, trying to calm his racing heart by patting his chest. After waiting for a few minutes, he knocked on the door cautiously, peering inside through a gap. Finding Shu Sui lying in bed receiving an IV drip, Hu Qianxi noticed Zhou Jinze idly fiddling with a lighter nearby. Just as he was about to step in, Zhou Jinze's indifferent glance made him hesitate. Zhou Jinze didn't answer, but asked sarcastically, "What do you think?" Hu Qianxi was about to reply when Zhou Jinze suddenly turned serious and said, "How do you judge people?" The coldness of his expression sent shivers down Hu Qianxi's spine. He felt so guilty. "Sorry, this is bad, Shu Sui. I'm in trouble." Zhou Jinze saw the sweat on Hu Qianxi's face and knew he was relieved. "No more running next time," Uncle said. Then he quickly snuggled into Shu Sui's arms for comfort. "Oh, just now almost scared me to death." After sending them out to buy cigarettes, Zhou Jinze couldn't help trembling as the door closed. He really is scary when angry. He apologized worriedly and asked about Shu Sui's condition. Shu Sui didn't care much. It was just a case of acute gastritis that would be fine after an IV drip. But he was more concerned with the match result. This made Shu Sui feel even guilty. It was because of his fainting that Zhou Jinze lost, and when Zhou Jinze came back with a bowl of congee, Shu Sui noticed Hu Qianxi had left without noticing his sadness. When Zhou Jinze offered him the congee, Shu Sui hesitated before taking it and thanking him. The warmth in his hands made him feel even more guilty. Hu Qianxi's guilt was so intense that tears started streaming down his face. Zhou Jinze comforted him with a smile. "I've won too many times to care about losing." "Not because of you," Shu Sui said, almost crying again. "Do you think I'm stupid?" Zhou Jinze raised an eyebrow and sighed. "Why do you cry so much? It's like I can't help it when you cry." Zhou Jinze tried to distract him by taking out a warm baby from his pocket. The sudden change made Shu Sui nervous, as Zhou Jinze gently placed the warm baby in his hand, speaking softly for the first time. "Holding on," he said. It was a warm baby, meant to keep his cold-blooded body warm after faking an illness. Who says I'm not caring? Just this congee and warm baby. How many jerks are so thoughtful? This impromptu bout of gastritis gave Shu Sui another chance to get closer to Zhou Jinze.
The thoughtfulness was priceless, like any precious jewelry. It made Hu Qianxi smile gratefully. Thank you, Zhou Jinze smiled back. He could finally let go of his stress. After that, he stayed by Su Sui's side as he received the IV drip. The afternoon sun shone through the window on Zhou Jinze, and the gentle breeze carried a hint of his scent. Such a beautiful scene made Hu Qianxi reluctant to disturb it. Checking online, there was still half an hour left before the drip cooled down. He wanted to read a book or revise for class, but his bed was too far away. With an IV in hand and unable to move much, he tried not to wake Zhou Jinze by minimizing noise. But the clean floor made him slip, so he grabbed the table instead. The book on the ground fell out, revealing a photo. Zhou Jinze woke up from the sound, but focused on Su Sui first. I'll get it for you, Su Sui said shyly, asking for help. As Zhou Jinze reached to pick it up, a gust of wind blew through the window, making the pages flutter and expose half of the photo. Hu Qianxi's face turned red with excitement as he tried to grab it back. Zhou Jinze held it triumphantly in his hand, shaking it at Su Sui. Want it? I won't give you. Su Sui struggled to take it. Give me, or else. His eyes wide with fear, he couldn't retreat once the words were out. He pretended to be angry and threatened. Or else, I'll bite you. Zhou Jinze found him amusing as a scared cat, laughing uncontrollably. Hu Qianxi felt embarrassed and angry. Stop laughing. Despite his interest in the photo's content, he knew privacy was important. Seeing Su Sui's nervousness, he decided not to tease him anymore. It was someone important, Zhou Jinze thought. The person in the photo was indeed Zhou Jinze himself. If that wind could have blown a bit harder and revealed his secret love for Hu Qianxi, maybe they wouldn't have been apart for so long. Important, Zhou Jinze mused, but he didn't dwell on it. They left things as they were until they reached the dormitory entrance. Only then did Zhou Jinze leave with a sense of relief, not asking for anything in return. But Su Sui felt indebted. Thank you today. I really appreciate your help. Do you have any requests? He wanted to say no, but was annoyed by someone approaching him. As he approached, Shi Yuejie's cold gaze met Zhou Jinze's. They silently clashed in the air. It was clear who won this round. Since that day, Su Sui's heart had been racing with anticipation. But Zhou Jinze didn't say anything. He looked at Su Sui's clear eyes and felt a bit guilty. Then he smiled and said, I want you. Don't cry. But his expression made him look like an anxious cat, making Zhou Jinze laugh uncontrollably. Hu Qianxi felt embarrassed. Stop laughing. Despite his interest in the photo's content, he knew privacy was important. Seeing Su Sui's nervousness, he decided not to tease him anymore. It was someone important, Zhou Jinze thought. If that wind could have blown a bit harder and revealed his secret love for Hu Qianxi, maybe they wouldn't have been apart for so long. Important, Zhou Jinze mused, but he didn't dwell on it. After a week of recovery, Su Sui finally felt well enough to eat. The past 7 days had been filled with nothing but clear soups and congee, which made him crave some spice. Suddenly, Zhou Jinze sent a message. Come over, I'll treat you. Hu Qianxi's heart skipped a beat. He knew Zhou Jinze loved jokes. This made Hu Qianxi very happy, forgetting he was still in class and causing the teacher to be displeased. When Hu Qianxi heard his name called, he stood up quickly. Translate crush for me, please. Luckily, Hu Qianxi knew many English words, so the teacher couldn't ask him again. He explained that as a noun, it meant a restricted area for dangerous animals, and also passionate but short-lived infatuation or intense love. This made Hu Qianxi pause. Passionate yet brief? That's exactly how he felt about Zhou Jinze. After class, Hu Qianxi walked under the warm sun to Jingxing. The wind blew through his hair, making him look even more attractive. He didn't want to run into a particularly annoying high school acquaintance, but was pulled by the wrist. Old friend, it's Li Sen. It's been so long since we last saw each other. Hu Qianxi felt annoyed at this familiar face. This guy had always bullied the big guys in high school and now wanted his number. A frog dreaming of a swan. I'll teach you a lesson.
His mood was ruined, but Gao Yang watched it all with satisfaction. Li Sen felt embarrassed and turned to attack Hu Qianxi's weakness. Seeing Mei, he said, "How dare you still care about your father after so many years?" They never let his father go, even though he had survived. Despite his bullying, Su Sui's expression didn't change. He wasn't at all afraid. But that doesn't mean he could bully him. He didn't look around to see who owned this place. A boy hit on the head with a can of cola, drenched in icy cold water. Who did it? Only Zhou Jinze stood not far away, his cold eyes exuding an unapproachable authority. Your father, Gao Yang was about to speak up for Li Sen, but Zhou Jinze didn't even give him a glance and wasn't bothered by these people. He walked over to Su Sui's side, protecting him as he left. His dismissive attitude made Li Sen so angry his teeth were itching. Hell, what right does he have to be so arrogant? I'll make sure of it. Zhou Jinze, do you know how Su Sui used to look? Hearing the revelation of his flaws, Su Sui's body trembled with fear. A woman beautifies for one she loves. Even if he's better now, he doesn't want others to know, especially Zhou Jinze. Zhou Jinze felt a surge of anger at the trembling in his body. And those photos? Let me see them and give you a taste. Zhou Jinze slowly approached Li Sen, then raised his hand without hesitation, giving him a heavy punch that sent his phone flying. Zhou Jinze treated him like trash, stepping on him harshly, displaying an anger he had never shown before. Seeing Su Sui's sadness, all Zhou Jinze could think was to beat the person who hurt him until they were dead. Even knowing it would lead to punishment, he didn't care. As Sheng Nanzhou held back Zhou Jinze, Li Sen took advantage and escalated his verbal attack, making Zhou Jinze grab Sheng Nanzhou's hand. This kind of person wouldn't admit fault without a lesson. You have two choices. Either apologize or avoid me wherever I am. Li Sen still wasn't satisfied. Zhou Jinze endured it all, finally letting go of his collar and slamming him against the wall with a loud thud. He could have beaten him to a pulp, but thinking about Su Sui's future, he chose a competition instead. The defeated Li Sen looked like he had eaten a cake. Hai Yang, who harbored ulterior motives, suddenly spoke up. Let me compete with you. We'll have the first flight technology contest in a month. Li Sen thought Hai Yang could help him, so he became even more arrogant, demanding that Zhou Jinze run 10 laps naked on Jingxing's playground and shout that he was a defeated warrior. Let everyone see our boss's power. Su Sui tugged at Zhou Jinze's sleeve, saying his matter didn't matter. If Zhou Jinze lost the competition because of this, how could he hold his head up in Jingxing? He should always be that dazzling youth. Facing Li Sen's provocation, Zhou Jinze patted Su Sui's hand to comfort him. What are you afraid of? He smiled confidently, showing no fear. His eyes were as calm and composed as usual. At this moment, he saw the determination in Zhou Jinze's eyes. After resolving everything smoothly, Su Sui finally had his celebratory dinner on schedule. Following Zhou Jinze's generous invitation, everyone enjoyed their favorite dishes. Su Sui continued to add more food, but as they ate, Da Liu mentioned that it was also exam day, and reporters would come for a special report. Hai Yang was even more cunning than Li Sen. This wasn't just a competition, it was meant to humiliate him. Zhou Jinze didn't care because he knew Hai Yang was always second best. Da Liu saw Zhou Jinze's composure and joked, "Brother, are you confident?" He looked at Su Sui, who seemed sad, but was actually more focused. Not enough spice. Su Sui shook his head, pretending to be calm. Such a proud person would lose face if he admitted defeat. So, Su Sui tried to persuade Zhou Jinze to give up the bet. What he feared was this. Don't worry, I won't lose. Since he agreed, I won't fight without preparation. There are no one in Jingxing who can beat him, just Hai Yang. Winning isn't that hard, right? Huan Qianxi, after hearing about it, roared and then hugged Su Sui tightly, heartbroken by his Wei Chu. With Zhou Jinze's protection during the day, Su Sui felt better, but he was still worried about the bet. Huan Qianxi remained calm. Don't worry, he has a plan. But recent events made him realize that his uncle liked Su Sui because of all the special care. Su Sui didn't want to think too much, but Huan Qianxi urged him to confess. This is no improvement, I'm afraid. How about we bet? If you win, you can confess. Try it. Maybe this will end your 3 years of secret love. It was so tempting. He had been in love for so long and wanted a result. He decided to take the chance now. Zhou Jinze, despite his wild exterior, was always honest and kind, respecting everyone. For him, confessing once was worth it. Even if he failed, there would be no regrets. Someone else cared about him deeply. Su Sui still worried about Zhou Jinze's participation in the flight competition. The image of him fainting in the elevator still scared him. He sent a message but got an instant reply. "Who told you I have claustrophobia?" Su Sui hesitated, hearing it from high school. Discussing privacy, Zhou Jinze finally revealed his condition to Su Sui, comforting him with, "Don't worry." Su Sui's heart was at ease, remembering Huan Qianxi's encouragement. He had always wanted to do this. He pulled out the confession letter hidden in a book. He started writing it secretly when he first fell for Zhou Jinze. He always dreamed of giving it to him one day, but never dared to hand it over. Now, with an opportunity, he was still nervous. Should I confess? Unfortunately, the letter remained ungiven. On competition day, the controller brought Huan Qianxi and Su Sui into the control room. When Instructor Zhang saw Zhou Jinze, he mentioned their bet, leading to a teacher's bet. The teachers naturally supported their star student, Zhou Jinze. Zhang believed Haiyang was very hardworking. Zhou Jinze would win for sure. As the competition began, the blue-clad Zhou Jinze appeared on screen. His cold face showed no signs of nervousness. This was Su Sui's first time seeing Zhou Jinze in a formal flight uniform. He watched intently, his heart pounding. Zhou Jinze entered the cockpit with an instructor and quickly checked everything. The instructor looked surprised. He didn't seem at all nervous. Zhou Jinze continued jokingly, "Acting, His half-serious attitude made the instructor feel awkward. Initially, Zhou Jinze was a bit nervous, his first solo flight. It was a normal reaction to an unknown future. As the plane started and rose smoothly, his nerves eased. Unfortunately, halfway through, technical issues appeared, including engine warnings. The third engine's oil temperature was too high, causing urgent alarms that made Zhou Jinze tense again. The co-pilot asked, "Need help?" Such a rare flight issue happened to this child. Zhou Jinze refused help confidently and calmly explained the steps, then handled it himself. Although the alarms stopped, warnings still appeared on the engine page. What now? Zhou Jinze flicked his tongue, speaking clearly. He shut down the engine, handling everything quickly and efficiently. The instructor recognized this child's potential. He would be a great pilot. Seeing the extended hand, Zhou Jinze smiled, bumping fists with the instructor. He knew it was an acknowledgement of his skills, encouragement, and respect from a fellow teammate. In the control room, the controller also cheered. "Great!" Su Sui in the background couldn't help smiling too. His hands were sweaty during the incident, but now he could finally relax. Everything would go smoothly. On the return flight, the plane passed through clouds at 5:59 a.m. Large red and brown patches looked like a flowing rainbow under the light. Zhou Jinze wasn't seeing the sunrise for the first time, yet he stood there, lost in the moment. Suddenly, Du Shui's words echoed in his mind. The sunrise isn't any less beautiful than the sunset. Just wait a bit longer. At this moment, Zhou Jinze's perspective had changed. Wanting to capture the scene before him, he asked his instructor to take his picture, which brought laughter from everyone present. "Never seen a sunrise?" he replied seriously. "Yes, it's my first time. The sunrise during my first flight. Originally, just like what he said, the sunrise isn't any less beautiful than the sunset. There will always be better scenery."